Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. My name is Herb Cohen. This evening will be about the subject of negotiation. Negotiating is something that all of you know a great deal about. I say that because whenever we attempt to reconcile differences, resolve disputes, manage conflict, establish or adjust relationships, we're negotiating. All of you, in more instances than you realize, are constantly playing the negotiating game. And please note that I refer to it as a game because you're better off seeing it that way. Because the game is where you care. Really care, but not that much. Now, why do I say that? Because who's the worst person that you negotiate for? I believe the answer is yourself. I know that's not only true in your case, I know it's true in my case. I really do rather well negotiating on behalf of others. In fact, to be honest with you, that's how I really earn a substantial living. I try to have as my clients very wealthy entrepreneurs, large corporations with money to spend, and I operate on their behalf in deal making. And the way I am compensated is I get a meager, a modest percentage of an enormous deal. This works out well for myself and my family, and so I must be pretty good at doing that. Yet when I negotiate on behalf of myself, I am close to inept. I am pathetic. Now, why is that the case? Do you believe it is because I am lacking in self-esteem? Let me assure you, that is not so. I like me one heck of a lot. In fact, if I could be more effective for myself and less effective for you, I would prefer it that way. But in truth, I am better for you. Why? Because I don't even know you. I mean, I care about you, but not that much. And that attitude tends to give me altitude and perspective. See, every one of you know in this room that the single best way to make a good deal is to convey to the other side, hey, I could live without this deal. I've got other options, other alternatives. Indeed, as the great negotiator, Kenny Rogers once remarked, you got to know when to hold them, and once in a while be prepared to fold them and walk away. And if the other side senses you've got other options, other alternatives, and just might fold them and walk away, they don't let you fold them and walk away. And so the operative attitude for success and satisfaction in all of life's negotiations is really to care, but not that much. Now, negotiating is a game, all right, but the game is best played as one of addition and not subtraction or exclusion. By that I mean the optimal negotiating outcome, the most desirable result you want to achieve, is one where both sides gain. This matter is mutually profitable for both of you, because that's the basis of long-term, healthy, and continuing relationships. Now, the thing that prevents us from doing this is that we tend to approach situations in a manner that's much too adversarial. See, we start out thinking, okay, I know what I want, but very often your initial proposal gives them an outcome whereby they can't get what they want. And the same thing is true as far as they're concerned. So the essence of successful negotiation is really not competitive behavior. It's really not an adversarial approach, but it's creativity and innovation. By that I mean, you want to try to find an option that provides for joint gain. You want to drain the emotional content from life's strategic interactions. You want to look at situations and lighten up and say, hey, this is a blip on the radar screen of eternity. This is a walnut in the batter of life. That enhances your creativity. That helps you come up with third-way alternatives that provide for joint gain. Now, what negotiating is really all about, it's voluntary decision making. Unlike the great growth industry of our time, litigation, negotiating in the final analysis requires two people to say yes. The difficulty with all of that is at least one of those people starts out saying no, or at best they're reluctant or they're not sure. And so what you're trying to do is move someone from reluctance to commitment, from no to yes. Occasionally people will say to me, Herb, in your career, have you ever encountered a situation where two people are saying yes and then they bring you in to that situation? And the answer to that is no. Why would they bring me in? See, right now you don't have two people sitting around in San Francisco. One says to another, I think your business is worth $8 million. The other says, I concur. I think we got a deal here. Let's give this guy Cohn a call on the East Coast, bring him out here and give him a percentage of the action. I don't get those calls. I don't know who does, but not me. Let me tell you when they call me in. One person says to another, I think your business is worth $8 million. The other says, I'm offended by that chintzy, niggling, paltry, and pathetic offer, which I regard as a personal insult, because my grandfather started this business, which we believe is worth $80 million. The only way I would even consider your offer is if you threaten to rip the tongue from the roof of my mouth, if you threaten to tear the eyeballs from my skull, if you threaten to maim, murder, and destroy my family, whom I love dearly, and that were a viable threat, then I might consider it. But as far as you're concerned right now, shove it. The person to whom that is said to will then call my office. And the way they present it to us is this way. They say, we have a problem here in San Francisco involving perception. Perhaps Herb can come out here and serve as a catalyst to facilitate things. And Herb, quite foolishly, makes those trips. When I fly out there, I do not stride off the plane going, hi there, top negotiator from the East, ready to take over. Indeed, to be honest with you, this is about as good as I ever look. As many of you might suspect, I'm not a big believer in dressing for success. Because I've never been in a situation where people are saying, no, absolutely no, forget it, and you walk in, they go, hey, I love the way that guy's put together. The matching ensemble, the power tie, the cut and fabric of his garments. See, I was thinking no, but based on his clothing, make that yes, no. The opposite may actually be true. If you look that good, they somehow expect you to make the concessions. And so my strategy in negotiations is generally to make the other side feel superior to me. In many cases, you have to work very hard, but nevertheless, it tends to pay off. Now, what negotiating is about, it's about a cross-cultural phenomenon. By that I mean, we don't see things as they are. Each of us see things as we are. We are captives of the pictures in our brain. See, even within this room, assuming you all lived in the same area, you all work for the same company, there still wouldn't be one reality. But there are as many realities as there are people. If there was anybody here exactly like you, there'd be no reason for you to be here. Therefore, one of the first things you want to do in every single negotiation encounter, as you meet the other side, as you make contact, you want to try your best to get into their world. Try to find out, as young people would say to us, where they're coming from. What's their experience? What's their background? Try to discover from them their underlying interests, concerns, needs. What are their problems? And you want to see yourself as a problem solver. That means that when I start my encounter with you, which is classified as a negotiation, I will start out asking more questions than I have answers. Indeed, I will ask questions when I think I know the answers. I will actively listen to you and convey to you that I'm listening. Now, how do I do this? You speak, I actually look at you. In other words, I'm not one of these guys who's going to, you talk and I look up at the ceiling and I construct a steeple before your eyes, and then they look down at you through that steeple. No. I don't have a poker face. I'm not masking my feelings. I'm listening to you. I'm actually writing down what you're saying. And by the way, I always write down what people say. You may wonder, well, what if they're talking gibberish, junk? They're stupid, they're ignorant people. More important than ever to write down what they say. Why? Because you're probably the first person that ever took them seriously. So you write down what they say. Then you read it back to them to make sure you've got it right. And it's been my life's experience that I never have it right. I've always mischaracterized something, I left something out. And so what I do then is I change it on my sheet of paper. Make sure they're satisfied before I go on. See, what better way to convey respect for the other side than doing something like this? Also, I try not to be judgmental. Everyone has a belief system, certain opinions, but I attempt to withhold judgment and bias. Also, don't spend time arguing, debating with people, showing them where they're wrong, foolish, stupid, or misinformed. Why? Because those people who you're putting down have now got to make a decision that in essence says, yes, I'd like to enter into a relationship with this person and periodically be humiliated in this fashion. You would need people with strong masochistic tendencies. So I'm saying to you, although people may tell you that individuals involved in selling and persuasion encounter the other side, take control of the discussion, sell the technical features of their products, their services, their proposals, and their ideas, I'm saying to you, forget it. Forget it. What you want to do is try to determine what the underlying concerns, interests, and needs of the other side is all about. Try to help your client, your customer, to solve his or her particular problems. And so, in essence, you're going to attempt to probe deeper and listen louder. And you're going to see yourself gathering a lot of information. Now, if you see negotiations as cross-cultural, by that I mean, even if the person you're dealing with is your own child, someone who lives across the street, someone you've known for years, but you put the focus on them and their concerns, you're going to gather a lot more information and you're going to be much more effective as a leader. See, and what is a leader? A leader is someone who can get people to do voluntarily those things that must be done. To me, that's what negotiating tends to be all about. And so this works out really in the real world and the experiences that you have. And I'll even give you a couple of examples how it worked out for me in all sorts of situations. About 4 years ago, a group called the Tupac Amaru took over the Japanese embassy in Lima, Peru. I don't know if you remember this. And originally they were holding 185 hostages. I was one of the people that set up the FBI's hostage negotiating program in Quantico, Virginia. So I get this call to go to the White House. Actually, it wasn't exactly to meet the president, but I met with the National Security Advisor who was briefing me about the problem in Lima, Peru. And he wants me to go down there and meet with the then president, Alberto Fujimori, and give him the benefit of my experience in this area. I agree to go. As soon as I said yes, the door swung open partially to the room, and in popped the head of then President William Jefferson Clinton. Just a head. I never saw the body. I am not acquainted with his body. Don't ask me about his body. But I know the head. And the head spoke to me. And the head said, "Good luck, Herb. And remember, this matter involves plausible deniability, which when you translate into English means, when you screw this up, we don't know who you are." So, it is with that vote of confidence that I'm on my way to Lima, Peru. Plane lands in Lima, I don't even go through customs. Big limousine picks me up, takes me directly to the presidential palace, where I actually met President Fujimori, who shook my hand, offered me a cup of tepid tea, and one cracker on a plate. I remember at the time looking around to see what I could put on a cracker, which tells you a lot about my personal priorities and needs. As I was doing this, President Fujimori speaks and says, "I'm not really handling this matter. The military is." The door swings open as if on cue. 3 military guys march in. They didn't walk, they march. They're wearing uniforms, they got their caps on, they got fruit salad, right on that. They've got ribbons down both sides of their jacket, and they got medals hanging from their neck. And I'm thinking, did I miss a big war down here? Because I got to be in the presence of some of the world's bravest people. So at the beginning, I started to follow the dictates of the National Security Advisor, who told me, give him my experience. So I'm giving him my experience. I'm doing a heck of a lot of talking, although this is what I tell you not to do. I'm talking, I've got answers for them, and I notice I'm kind of turning them off. And they start telling me what they're doing. They're saying, look, we're digging a tunnel under the building. We're ready to assault these people momentarily. We're overflying. We're trying to provoke them. And I explained to them, as everyone knows, look, they're not going anywhere. We got the place surrounded. Time works in our favor. Take your time. But I'm making no impression on them whatsoever. And then I remembered what I just told you. I started asking them questions. I started listening to them. I started taking notes. I started asking them about their background, and by the way, their background was strange. I remember the guy in the center told me that he had a lot of experience in hostage negotiations, because once in his village, a 9-year-old boy took a dog that didn't belong to him, and he ran away, and they chased him. He ran into a shack. They surrounded the shack. The shack was made of wood and fabric, and they surrounded the shack, and they gave the boy 10 to come out or let go of the dog. And I was thinking at the time, what about 3? See, in America, we do 3, 1, 2, 3. But it's a slower culture. They give him 10 to come out, and when you don't come out, I'm waiting. What happened? He said, we burned down the shack. I said, well, like that's the end of the story. Finally he says to me, the dog jumped free. Never mentioned the boy to me. And I'm thinking, just hanging around with these guys. This association will cause me to lose brain tissue. My IQ will be dropping precipitously. But nevertheless, I kept doing what I told you to do, to ask questions, to listen, to take notes, to probe. And I found that I became more influential with these people, got them to wait approximately 7 days before they really took military action, got them to use the tunnel under the embassy as a way of gathering intelligence. And ultimately, when the assault came, virtually no lives were lost with respect to hostages in that particular endeavor. The second example let me give you is the Iran hostage crisis, which some of you may recall. In November of 1979, a horde of Iranian students scaled the wall, the gates of the American embassy, and took 53, then 52 American diplomats hostage. The original approach of the then Carter administration was a legalistic diplomatic approach. We said, hey, this is a breach of diplomatic tradition, this is a violation of international law, and we want these people back. In fact, President Carter went so far as to say, this situation is the centerpiece of my foreign policy. And if I don't get these people back right away, I won't campaign against Teddy Kennedy. This didn't seem to work that much. I get this call to come to the White House. The reason I got the call is I had this hostage negotiating experience, which I mentioned to you. I also spent about 1.5 years in Iran on all sorts of commercial dealings. I knew a lot about Islam, Shiism. I knew about Persian history and culture. And as I understood it, my job was to explain to President Carter, Cyrus Vance, the then Secretary of State, and Warren Christopher, his deputy, how to negotiate with the Iranian mullahs. I get there, and I started explaining to him. I said, look, your initial approach is not working because of the way the mullahs see the situation. See, they come from a bargaining culture. They bargain everything there. Think of your own experience. Have any of you in this room ever purchased a Persian rug retail? Even if you wanted to, they wouldn't let you. It would be a cultural sin. Everything's bargained for. How do we feel about negotiating in America? We don't even call it that. We call it bargaining, haggling, chiseling. My wife has even said to me on many an occasion, I do not lie for money. The implication is that I do. So we're really out of our element here. I'm explaining this to President Carter. I remember saying to him, when you walk into the rug seller's bazaar, and remember, these people we're dealing with see themselves as having 53, then 52 hot rugs for sale. They're trying to get as much as they can for their illegally obtained merchandise. And so when you walk in there and tell them how badly you want them, the hostages back, the rugs, if you would, what you're doing is you're creating more demand. Since the supply is limited, the value of the hostages go up in their eyes, and unintentionally, you are prolonging their captivity. President Carter cut me short. I don't think he was happy with this. He said, Herb, I don't think you understand. You, myself, and the Mullers, we all from the same Abrahamic tradition. I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about. And then I kind of figured it out. Sort of struck me that he and I may have been from that tradition, but not the Mullers. So this didn't deter me. I'm going on. I'm saying, look, what is the largest single purchase Americans make? We buy a home. The home, even if it's in a tract area, a development area where all homes are alike. How do we know what to pay? We look for the sign in the sky. It's 150 feet up there, and the sign says in block letters, $179,226. And that's what we're paying. Same as everybody else, what it says on the sign. Even though we're getting screwed at that price, we don't care. Everybody's getting screwed at that price. Why? It's the American way. The quality of screwing across the board. And when we make that purchase, by the way, we're going to make it fast. Why? Time is money, in and out, right? How about the Iranians? They bargain everything. And furthermore, if you're a mullah, you're unemployed. Other than your obligatory prayers 5 times a day, the rest of the day you're looking to kill time. So we're coming from a different place. President Carter cut me short. Said, Herb, I don't think you understand Ayatollah Khomeini. He always called him Khomeini. It was like he knew Farsi, I didn't. He said, Ayatollah Khomeini is not like you and I. Ayatollah Khomeini is a martyr. He wants to die. He don't care about his own life. And I remember saying to him at the time, how old is Khomeini? And Carter knew all that stuff. He knew detail. He said, 86 years and 8 months. I said, look, how can you have an 86-year-old martyr? The life expectancy of a martyr is about 16.2 years. When you get in your 20s or 30s, you really need another career. And so I would come home from those encounters, walk into my household, where I'm greeted by my wife, Ellen, who is an upbeat, optimistic, enthusiastic person. She'd say to me, hey, how'd it go? I remember saying to her at the time, we have any U.S. savings bonds? Sell. Now, what I'm trying to get across to you is the importance of you recognizing that the people you're dealing with, whenever you interact with someone, is a unique person with special needs, special concerns. You're going to stereotype them, it's a mistake. Hey, and if you could recognize that and see yourself as an information gatherer, you're going to be way ahead. You're going to be halfway home toward effectiveness. See, believe that this multidimensional, multifaceted person has different background than you do. They carry different luggage, on their shoulders. I myself am a simple person. I'm on my back, I'm burdened down with Samsonite and American Tourister. This woman here is Gucci, Pucci, and Fiorucci. Who knows? You know what I mean? And so what you're trying to do is determine how she sees the situation. And if you can do that, you're way ahead of the game. Now, negotiating has been around from time immemorial. People have been playing this game. This is nothing new. If you were to look at the earliest pieces of literature, the earliest religious texts, they are replete with anecdotes and episodes involving negotiation. Early on in the Old Testament, there's an encounter between the Lord and Abraham. Some of you may recall this episode. The Lord advises Abraham that he intends to destroy the twin cities. In other words, Sodom and Gomorrah must go. We know from what occurs subsequently that Abraham does not buy into the Lord's solution. Abraham is now in a rather awkward, precarious, tenuous position. Why? He's going to try to negotiate with the Almighty. See, I call this operating from a position of less leverage. Whenever anyone says to you, hey, get out there and negotiate with the Almighty, it doesn't take a lot of smarts to figure that the power may be on the other side. Now, it is instructive, at least to me, how Abraham goes about this task. Does he say to the Lord, look, in the past your decision-making was outstanding, your judgment was impeccable, so I always went along. However, I think you may have blown this one. No. If you were to go back to your Bible, you will see Abraham's humble, deferential, low-key approach to persuasion. He says to the Almighty, I was thinking about what you were saying. Overall, another outstanding judgment on your part, as I knew it would be. No surprises there. However, a question kind of popped up into my head. I was just wondering, what if we were to come up with 50 good and decent people there, amidst all the evil and corrupt? Do you think it'll be right to kill the 50 good with all the evil? Just asking. And the Lord responds, why? Because all negotiations involve action, reaction. Think of your own experience. You make a proposal to someone, what do? They come back with a counter proposal. There is a demand, it's always followed by an offer. There's an asking price, it's followed by a bid. As experienced people, sometimes you make a proposal, they don't even respond. But you also know that not to respond is a response. Why? Because this game I'm talking about is a paradoxical game. It is an enigma. It is a conundrum where things on its face make absolutely no sense. Yet at an underlying level, somehow it does. It's like LAX, the airport here, where more planes land than take off. See, a lot of us can't figure out. It's like, what do you say to God when he sneezes? Presumably a paradox of sorts. Now, in this example that I give you, Abraham makes a proposal to the Lord. Well, what if I come up with 50 good and decent people? And the Lord immediately responds, Abraham, you get the 50 good ones. Amidst all the corrupt, we'll spare all of Sodom and Gomorrah. Back to Abraham. I didn't really do a count. I'm not sure how many there are. I could easily be 5 short. How'd you feel about 45? Lord says, fine, we'll go with the 45. Back to Abraham. I'm speaking figuratively. I may only have 25. Lord says, fine, we'll go with the 25. And the Bible explains to us how Abraham gets the law down to 10, which I personally feel is damn good negotiating. Now, the only problem is he can't come up with the 10. But that's an entirely different question. Now, why do I use that example? Because I've got 2 purposes in mind. One, to point out to you that every one of you who are in this room, who are listening to me, know more about negotiations than you realize. You have to know a lot about negotiations. Why? You have children who know how to negotiate. You were once children. You were little people in a big person's world. Children tend to get a heck of a lot of what they want. How do kids seem to do that? Number one, children aim high. They expect more. And in life, when you expect more, you tend to get more. So one of the things you want to try to do is raise your sights. You remember the German rocket scientist, Werner von Braun, worked for the Nazis, and then he worked for NASA. He wrote his autobiography, which is called Aim for the Stars. The man never hit the stars once. Hit London a hell of a lot. My point is, it pulls up your performance. So, kids expect a lot. Their requests of their parents are unreasonable, yet they seem to do pretty well. Second thing about children is children understand the decision-making process within their own organization. See, and they go up to a mom and they ask for something, and the mom rejects it out of hand. Does the kid stop there? No, because children know. See, they know instinctively in their gut that no is an opening negotiating position. So they treat it accordingly, right? But the mother has rejected them. What do? They wait for the dad, the father. When the 2 parents are united against them, hey, it looks like they should give up. They don't. They appeal to grandparents. And so this thing is ongoing, this thing is continuing. Kids are persistent and tenacious, and they wear you down. And these are wonderful qualities to have as a negotiator. My wife and I, we are the parents of 3 children. With our oldest child, our daughter, I remember we used to have standards. We insisted she adhere to those standards. Second child, her brother. We had standards, same standards, but we had many more exceptions to those standards. Third child, we were tired people. You understand? Invariably, we would say to him, why don't you ask your brother and sister? They'll tell you how it used to be around here. And so, what I'm saying to you, all of you have that kind of experience. You know more about this than you realize. And you are confronted with a situation that looks new. It's not new. The cast of characters are different. The setting is different. But if you can conceptualize from your past experience, if you could build up your confidence, you tend to approach it in a much better frame of mind. The second point I want to make is that one of the reasons we do poorly in negotiations is we so often accept the way the other side has framed an issue and formulated a problem. See, they will say to you, look, do you want my business or don't you want my business? Yes or no? Is this a go or no-go situation? You want A or B? We evaluate this. A is terrible for me, but B is only poor. Now, if that's my choice, a lot of people say, I'm going with poor, because poor is a hell of a lot better than terrible. But all of you in this room know that you're never limited that way. See, even an ultimatum, which appears on its face to be a twofold choice. You know, you could take it or leave it. You know it's not a twofold choice. Sure, you could take it, you could leave it, or 3, you could come back with another proposal. And so, it's never between A or B. There's a C out there. There's a J, there's an omega, there's a number 32. Why do we get caught then in this rut? When people frame issues for us and we respond quickly. How do we get in that rut? Part of our problem is that if you were educated in North America, you went to grade school in this country, you were programmed early by teachers how they recognize bright students. See, they recognize bright students that when called upon, they have the right answer. Or 2, when the class is asked a general question, they get their hand up first. Speed of response. Speed of response is very important in this particular culture. In fact, you want to get on How to Be a Millionaire with Regis? You want to sit next to Regis? You don't have to be that smart. You got to put these 4 things in order. You understand? In 2.2 seconds. CBD Regis. A, whatever, you know. That's how you get on. Now, that may be true on the Millionaire Show with Regis. That may be true on Jeopardy. But that's not true in negotiating, and it's not true in life. Indeed, in life, dumb, basic stupidity is better than smart. Inarticulate is better than articulate. And actually, you want to train yourself to say, I don't know. I don't understand. Where am I? What the hell is it? I don't know. Hey, what you want to do is actually adopt the Socratic pose of ignorance. Hey, this will help you. You will gather more information. Teach yourself to dwell amidst ambiguity. Don't clarify things that quickly. Get in the habit of answering questions with questions. If you were me, what would you do? No matter what they say, you're not in trouble. You always come back with, too bad you're not me. And you're back to where you were. Ask the other side for help. This is a wonderful thing. Look, many of you will go into a situation where you will feel overmatched, overwhelmed. Because what we do is we tend to look at ourselves and we magnify our problems, whereas the other side seems to look so content and so good, like, hey, they don't even want to be here, you know? And even tell you, I'm not here to negotiate, you know? Then why are they here? By the way, everyone who you could find, hey, is there to negotiate. The only people that aren't negotiating is a genuine recluse or a hermit. You can't find them, they're not negotiating. But people that come a distance to see you to tell you that this is not negotiable. It's a little joke. Now, what I'm saying to you is that occasionally you'll go into a situation where you will feel you have a disability. I mean this in a figurative sense. I mean you're the only woman, they're all men on the other side. You're the only man, they're all women. You look at them, they seem to be more in command of the situation than you are. You're new. They appear to be more experienced. You're a younger person. They have a hell of a lot of hair on their head. You're a bald person. Understand? They have a better nose than you have. You know, in this country, we're big on noses. You know, there's like a better nose and a worse nose. I don't understand this. If the purpose of a nose is to smell, you would think the bigger the better, right? Nice bulbous nose. But the worst nose in America is the Tip O'Neill bulbous nose. And the best nose is really the little baby pug nose. In fact, the optimum nose is probably 2 holes drilled right into your skull. So you feel disabled by your nose. You feel disabled by your clothes. I don't care what your problem is. Hey, turn to the other side and say, look, I feel kind of awkward here. I'm young, I'm just starting. You seem so experienced. Could you help me? Help me. And believe me, 30-40% of the time, people will come to your aid. Let me share with you the magic words of negotiations. Words I trust you will take out of here and make part of your negotiable vocabulary. These are wee words, small words. Each is 3 letters. First word is spelled H-U-H and is pronounced huh? And you say that a lot. Huh? Huh? Second word, W-H-A. There's no T on this and it's pronounced wah. And you integrate the two. Wah. Instantly you're going to be more effective in every one of your interpersonal dealings. Now, some of you may feel, gee, before I came here this evening, I was doing rather well. And my career was moving along. I was just polishing it up. But I listen to this guy, I go back, I destroy my career and my life. For those of you who feel that way, and I understand why, let me give you a slightly more sophisticated strategy than huh and wah. All for the purpose of slowing you down. See, that's what I want to get you to do. Slow down. When the other side seems to want an immediate answer, identify with the pen in your pocket. I've had this jacket on now for 2 hours. Okay, one of the first things I did when I put the jacket on was I put a pen in the pocket. Now, if I were to identify with this pen and what this pen has experienced in 2 hours, I know it's dark in the pocket. It is warm in the pocket. It is humid in the pocket, maybe even odors emanating from this pocket. And so, I identify with my pen, I pull out my pen after they ask me for an immediate response. I hold up my pen, I spin the pen around, I pull off the cap, I blow on the tip, thereby aerating it somewhat. I put the cap back on, put the pen back in the pocket, turn to the other side and say, where were we? This is helpful stuff. This is what you want to do. Now, the next major point I want to make here deals with a question of value or worth. What is the value of anything? The value of anything is what people are willing to pay for it. Therefore, if you see yourself as a buyer, okay, you're buying something, you want to generate as much competition for what you have, which in most cases would be money. And remember, money is a fungible commodity. By that I mean, if you don't buy this, you probably buy something else. So it's not going to be around forever, certainly in that form. If you're a seller, whatever you're selling, try to generate competition for what you have. That's what the name of the game is really all about. Now, years ago, I used to work for a major financial institution in the United States who saw themselves being in the business of selling money. By the way, they were a bank, selling money. This was a big mistake. They should have in the business of renting money, which means you got a better chance to get it back, unless they were renting it to South American countries when there was no chance. But nevertheless, their money looked the same as their competition's money. There was no difference. There was nothing added to it. And so people like me could use that situation and did. Say I'd go into the bank. I go into Bank A and I bring in all my financial statements and I put them down and say, look, I'm going to give you the opportunity to give me a line of credit here. Okay, by the way, I was broke, I was poor, but it's always like an opportunity is going to be extended to you for a limited period of time. give me a line of credit. Guy would look over my financials, check them out, and then he would give me an offer on what kind of rate they could give me for this money. I would never take that. Remember, why? First of all, it's the first offer. See, when they give you the first offer, that means there's more to come. Otherwise, they call it the final offer. They call it the first offer. All right? So I'd say, gee, thank you very much. Maybe I'll be back. I go across the street, same financials, show them everything, tell them what their competitor just offered me. And you know what they would do? They would beat it. They give me a better rate. Go back to the first bank again. Tell them, look, I owe this to you because I came to you first. Here's what your competitor did. Right? They would cut the rate again. Right? I say, well, maybe I'll be back. And then I don't even go back to the second bank. I walk around the block. And I come back to the first bank and say, you know, I don't have to tell you where I've been. Now, who's this person competing against? He's competing against himself. Do you understand? Now, how did this particular financial institution overcome this problem? What they did was they changed the shape of what they were offering. They gave value added to their money. See, it's not just money. They provided services with that, other add-ons. So you cannot compare what they're offering with what their competitive offers. It's hard to price that out. And that's what I call differentiation. I am a big believer in differentiation. Because it really gives you an edge. It also enables you to use your own unique style and personality, to be yourself, to be memorable. It's always good to be memorable and to do something in addition. So you make a sale, you get a piece of business, everyone says, good, hey, and you even got the money in. I would call up that individual to thank them. 2 months later, I would call them to see how everything's going in the way of service. No one else does that. You do that kind of stuff, it gives you an edge. It differentiates you from your competition. It makes you memorable. Indeed, probably one of the things I believe in this world more than anything else is that a nose that can hear is worth two that could smell. I don't even know what that means, but I believe in it and I try to live by it. The next point I want to make is that negotiating tends to be a process, which means it begins before we realize, and it's not over when we think it's over. It's like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning. Shakespeare or Steve McQueen, somebody said that, but there's truth to that. See, what people think negotiating is all about is the central core, which I call bargaining. Bargaining. You know when that occurs? When you have the meeting, you come in, you dress well, you know, you adopt your management walk, your voice drops 2 octaves. Hi, good seeing you, how are you? You know what I mean? And you have that hearty, firm handshake, and they look good as well. They take you into a room contiguous to where you actually met. And in this room, there's always a wooden rectangular table at the center. The room is furnished in a Spartan manner. And there's a couple of chairs on one side, a couple of chairs on the other. And they always sit down this side. And you think for some reason you're supposed to sit across from them. Never do that. I always sit next to them. And they go, whoa, what the hell? You know, it's like I made some sort of move on them. No. Remember, I'm trying to differentiate myself. And then what happens in these discussions is they give you their offer, their price, and you come back with yours, and you find the gap between you is enormous. Your stomach drops. You'll never make this deal. Well, in the course of discussing this with them, they make a concession, you make a concession, you're getting closer, but still you don't think you can arrive at an agreement. When suddenly something happens, the deadline comes. Deadline. Every one of you in this room know that in negotiations in life, concessions and agreements occur in proximity to a deadline. Is this not true? What if there is no deadline? There is drift. When do people file their income tax returns? And don't give me a clinical answer by saying, well, it depends whether they owe money or have money coming back. By the way, it's a logical, rational way of looking at it, except that there's no difference in the percentage. You know, 86% of the people file at the very end close to the deadline, whether they have money coming back or whether they owe the government money. Deadlines affect people. You give a secretary 14 days to type up a report. When are you going to get the report back typed? 14 days if you're lucky. All right? Deadlines. And so, if concessions and agreements occur up against that deadline, what if you're a literal person about the deadline? You say, well, I really believe the deadline my whole life. I'm an organized person. I have my planner here, That's why I use self-discipline. But I say, hey, there's a deadline, there's a deadline. We don't have the same deadline. See, when you're under stress and are going to make concessions to me because you don't want to go over the deadline and, by the way, incur a deadlock. I mean, that sounds terrible. Deadlock means you walk to the abyss, you look down at the abyss is looking back up at you. This is scary stuff. And people don't want a deadlock. You don't want to come home from work and someone says to you, how'd it go today? Well, I deadlocked. You what? Yeah, you deadlocked. Well, we just got this big mortgage. We have kids to put through school. People don't want that to happen. And so everything will occur to avoid going beyond the deadline. Now, I say to you, and I wrote this book, which you know about, that you can negotiate anything, and indeed you can if you want to, because anything that's the product of a negotiation, by the way, what would that exclude? That would exclude things that are not the product of a negotiation. Ethical, moral, or religious principles. See, the Ten Commandments, other than what Mel Brooks would have you believe, was not the product of a negotiation. The Sermon on the Mount did not come about as a result of negotiations. Christ did not get together with some followers and say, give me your input, form a task force, work something out, and see what, develops. Since those items are not the product of a negotiation, I'm conceding they're not negotiable. But everything else is, including deadlines. Deadlines. And so there's more give in deadlines than people realize. And so I've tried to describe to you what happens in phase 2 of this process, what I call bargaining. Now, if there's a phase 2, there is a presumption there's a phase 1. It's just like when you go to the theater, and you're late. Oh, a lot of traffic. I was on the freeway, you get there late, and someone, as you walk in, you're walking down the aisle, people have to stand up, and someone says to you, they whisper, this is Act 2. It don't take a lot to figure. You missed Act 1. And so I've just described to you Act 2 of negotiation. Therefore, there's an Act 1. What is Act 1? Act 1 is the pre-bargaining period. Act 1 sets things up for the actual bargaining. It's where what you want to do is get as much information as you can from the other side before you meet them. See, how do you do that? Well, you speak to them on the phone, you check into his or her background, you go there, you visit them, you look at their secretary, you look up their website. You're trying to learn as much about the other side. You want to know about their deadlines, their constraints, their restraints, who has authority, and what have they done in the past. Because one of the best predictors of what people do in the future is what they've done in the past, particularly those that are successful. So you want to get information from them, but you also want to give them information. Why do you want to give information? Because you affect the expectation level of the other side. See, so many times we fail in negotiations, not because we didn't do a good job in phase 2, the exchange between us and the other side, but because the other side comes in with unrealistic expectations. By that I mean, you have a secretary, 3 years ago you gave the secretary a 7% increase. 2 years ago, 7%. Last year, 7%. Tell me, what's the secretary think they're getting this year? But I didn't tell them anything. See, their expectations. And so therefore, you're going to have a problem with the other side. So I'm saying, use your lead time, get out of the starting blocks earlier, anticipate the second phase, get information and give information. Now, if there's a phase 1 and phase 2, there's also an inference, there's a phase 3, and there is. And that is the period after the deadline passes. What most Americans do is the deadline is struck. They say, well, that's it. There's no more ambiguity, there's clarity, it's over. They close their loose leaf binders, they pack up their bags, and they're out of there. And I'm telling you, never do this. After it's over, You turn to the other side and say, now that it's over, where did I go wrong? What could I have done? What should I have done? Help me. And by the way, the other side will help you 50% of the time. They'll tell you, why you messed up this deal, thinking it's over. But in reality, many times you could resurrect the deal, so you could put it back together. Had you known this stuff, but they didn't tell you this stuff because you were in phase 2, the bargaining stage. And so what you want to do, is view phase 3 as breakdowns or breakthroughs. Every exit is an entrance someplace else. And as we know, in this world, pathology may be opportunity. And so what I'm trying to do is get you to see negotiation as this process. By the way, I'll tell you when I first learned this. I first learned this when I got married. My wife and I were married, and we were very young. I was certainly young mentally, emotionally. In terms of romance, it's kind of primitive, I guess. Well, after we got married, we had a wedding, and then the next day, we got up in the morning, and my wife starts giving me a performance appraisal, which I wasn't used to at the time. And I remember she used the word, she said, you didn't do this, and you're supposed to do this. And the word was foreplay. I didn't do foreplay. And the way she explained it to me, I thought she meant something like 2 hours of concerted begging. Now, see, what was my problem? My problem was, like a whole generation like me at the time, men were socialized not to deal with preliminaries. Men would come down, sit down, where's the food? You know what I mean? Their mate, the person in a relationship with them, has given them flowers, table. They don't want to know that stuff. I want to know what to eat. I go to Japan with people, guys, and the Japanese, garnish, decorate, everything. And they say, you supposed to eat this stuff? I said, no, it's decorative. Don't want to put it on my plate. They're actually angry. Get this stuff off my plate. We offend the Japanese hosts many a time that way. You got to recognize that preliminaries are important. And if phase 1 is foreplay, what's phase 2? Interplay. The interaction. And phase 3 may even be afterplay. But if you can see all of this as a dynamic 3-phase ongoing process, you're ahead of the game. One other point I want to make, and that is that if concessions and agreements occur in proximity to the deadline, and you're in a somewhat competitive situation, by the way, you don't want it to be, but it is. It's the nature of things. Because this relationship you're having with them is a one-time relationship. See, they're selling a house, they're moving across the country. It's different than if you live next door. If you're going to make your best offer, okay, your best offer, and it's to be believed it's your best offer, when should it come? It should come up against the deadline. What if it doesn't? See, what if you say, well, I'll make it right away, save time, and it really is your best offer? They'll never believe it's your best offer. So you got to take your reality as it is and play things according to that reality. The next point I want to make is that style resonates more than substance. How you initially approach the other side reverberates more with them than the content and the terms of this particular transaction. You are the singer and you count for more than the songs. You're the player, you're more important than the plays. By how I mean your demeanor, your manner, your way. That's more significant in the final analysis than the contents and terms of this transaction. And if you just think of your own experience, when someone says something to you at work that offends you, and you go home and you're explaining it to a significant other, why you're ticked off, and you tell them what happened, and you tell it to them in a very analytical way, and they don't understand why you're so upset, and you get irritated by this. You say, look, it's not what they said, it's the way or how they said it. If you would have been there, you'd know. What people are describing really is the how, the process. You show me people who are admired in this world, people who are very influential, people who are respected, who tend to make things happen, the things they want happen. I will show you people who have a style that others respect. Whether you're talking about Nelson Mandela, Pope John Paul II, or even Ronald Reagan, who I have come to regard as the most popular president of my lifetime. Now, do you believe Reagan was popular primarily because of his policies and programs? I worked for him for a year and a half. I didn't even know what they were. Neither did anyone else did. Reagan was popular primarily because of his style. What was Reagan's style? It was the quintessential American style. He embodied characteristics that were very American. He played them to his constituency, the American people, and so you got a perfect mesh. So he adapted himself to the people he was trying to influence. Now, why do I say this? Because over 170 years ago, a French sociologist by the name of de Tocqueville came to this country, traveled around, met Americans, interviewed them, took extensive notes, went back to France where he proceeded to write books in which he explained us to ourselves. Now, how come this guy could explain me to me? Why haven't I been able to figure me out? Because it's hard for me to know me. See, in trying to know me, I got to look at me through me, which creates distortion. That's why we often say it takes two to see one. Or as I would say, does the fish know it's in the water? You ever wonder about that? Presumably not, but I'm obsessed with this. I am constantly watching fish swim through water. Fish are very graceful, and then the fish makes its last move, its last mistake. It lunges for food, which we term bait, and the food is always impaled on a hook. So the fish will not just get the food, and also get the hook. And I'm with a child that is mercilessly reeling up this fish. All fish, when they break through the water, their behavior, their demeanor is the same. Their body is contorted. Their eyes bulge. Their head moves back and forth. Their mouth opens and closes as if to say, what the hell? I was in the water. Now, what did they think? Blurred vision was a norm? And so, it's hard for us to know ourselves. It takes a third party to tell us about us. Hey? De Tocqueville told us about Americans, an outsider. What did he say about Americans? He said Americans have three characteristics that he did not find among other peoples. Number one, Americans like things simply put. Americans believe in good, bad, right, wrong, for me, against me, friend or foe. Americans do not want to understand nuances, gradations, or subtleties. 8 years ago, I was on Nightline with Ted Koppel. He asked me, did I think the United States would be sending troops, ground troops, to fight in Bosnia-Herzegovina? I said, absolutely not. He said, well, how could you be so categorical in that response? I said, well, simple, two reasons. Number one, Americans don't know geography. See, we don't even know where Yugoslavia is. How are we going to know what Bosnia-Herzegovina is? And number two, that's a three-party struggle. Americans don't do three-party struggles. So we do two-party struggles, the good guys against the bad, and we like to believe we're siding with the good against the bad. Now, why are we this way? It's our history, it's our geography, it's our social, political system, may even be our mythology. And all of this has been reinforced by motion pictures, which have given generations in the United States its values. And I would remind you that the motion pictures that young people see today are not the movies that Ronald Reagan and I saw. See, in my day, before we went to the movie, we knew the movie. That's why we can come in the middle. See, to know what was going on. There were two horses outside a saloon, a good horse and a bad horse, and kind of like everything followed. John Wayne was the same guy in every movie. The man never let you down. Gary Cooper essentially played the same role. In fact, 1 year, he made 12 motion pictures. People said, how could he memorize all that dialogue? The dialogue was always the same. Yep, nope, same stuff. Today it's different. I go to the motion pictures. I do not recognize Meryl Streep from one role to the next. I tell you, as far as I'm concerned, a woman is a human chameleon. Robert De Niro seems to expand and contract before your eyes. Dustin Hoffman, Robin Williams, you don't even know gender. But Ronald Reagan is a product of my time, and he looks at the world simply. He's also an expert at framing issues. Remember the air traffic controller strike, the PATCO strike? At that time, I got a phone call from the head of that union, who asked me, how long did I think the strike would last? I said, probably forever. He said, no, you don't understand. We did not go out yet. I said, so I'm trying to tell you, don't go. And the reason I said this was these guys made every possible mistake that could be made in that situation. They had every rut on that road. The only way to do that was to double back. And the single biggest mistake they made was they let Reagan frame the issue. See, and Reagan's good at this. He asked the American people, is it okay for a government employee to violate a sacred oath, to strike against the interests of all Americans in violation of the law of the land. Huh? How can anybody win on that issue? The man has wrapped himself in the American flag, apple pie, and a hot lunch for orphans. And from that moment on, PATCO is perceived as a greedy kamikaze union. And the people who were presumably experts in collision avoidance, they didn't know how to apply it to the collective bargaining process. The second thing de Tocqueville told us about Americans is that Americans tend to be the most optimistic people in the entire world. Americans believe as an article of faith that all problems can be solved in our lifetime and all obstacles can be overcome. We are the only country in the history of this world that has ever declared war against poverty. Poverty has been in existence since the beginning of time. Not only did we declare war against it, we had a deadline for knocking it off, 3 years, and then presumably we would do something else. Al Smith, the Democratic presidential candidate, in 1928 said, "Americans don't eat umbrellas, we walk in eternal sunshine." Over 20 years ago, there was a Broadway musical called Annie. And that musical had a hit song, right, that sold 3.8 million records. Many of you remember this song. You wish you could forget it. It's called Tomorrow and had these lyrics. "The sun will come up tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun." In the United States, 3.8 million records, despite the fact that it had no beat. Total overseas sales for that was 19. They have no idea what the hell that's about. That is an American song. See, this is the big mistake that Jimmy Carter made. Jimmy Carter was moving along nicely, and then he entered the malaise period in his presidency. He decided to come down from the mountain and take political advice from Howard Cosell, who probably told him to tell it like it is. And he did. He told the American people, "Look, let me give you this straight. Your future is behind you. You're going to be the first generation whose standard of living will be lower than that of your parents. As far as owning your own home is concerned, forget it. No chance. See, because interest rates are out of control. There are so many variables involved, we can't even get a handle on this. As far as educating your children beyond high school, the likelihood is they won't be going, because by that time the costs will be prohibitive. So vote for me." Not a good approach with this constituency. Reagan, on the other hand, for 8 years, the man was upbeat, the man was ebullient, the man was congenial, the man was self-assured, the man was happy, ecstatic, and realistically, the man never had a right to be that happy. Why do I say that? Because 2.5 months into office was an assassination attempt. They almost killed him. His wife, whom he loves dearly, had a mastectomy. Members of her family that Reagan was personally close to died off while he was in office. Reagan also at the time had cancer in various parts of his body. He'd go in monthly to a hospital, they snip off a little piece of his nose. And he also has the four most disappointing children you could wish on any parent. Now, despite all of this, for 8 years the man was upbeat and ebullient. I know this because in those days I used to travel a lot to Western Europe. This is before the proliferation of CNN, which meant when I was over there, I was starving for national news and especially sports news. So I'd rush home on Friday, rush to a TV set where I lived, and turn it on, in time usually for the national news, which meant I was watching ABC, NBC, or CBS. Now, every week I turned on my set, no matter what was going on in the world, good, bad, or indifferent. Ronald Reagan was the one constant in my life. You turn on the set and there he is. He's smiling, he's waving, he's happy, and he's moving right toward a helicopter. You know, as he's moving, you see him on camera. He says, "Yes, another great week for me and the entire American people, in fact, the whole free world." A man with a very old face and very young miracle hair. And he was always followed by a woman being pulled by a dog. Then he would stop short of the helicopter to take a question from the omnipresent Sam Donaldson, who I personally felt was chained to him. Now, how did you know it was Sam Donaldson? Reagan would tell you. He'd go, "Yes, what is it, Sam?" No one saw Sam. No one heard Sam. And by the way, at the time, Ronald Reagan couldn't even hear. He was wearing a double hearing aid. The man could not hear, which, by the way, might have accounted for his congeniality. You know, "What is it, Sam?" Everyone would wait. People look around. And then no one heard anything, and then Reagan would start to respond. In the midst of his response, the helicopter blades go on to be spirited away. But this gave his constituency, the American people, this wonderful feeling that problems were being dealt with and leadership was being exercised. The third thing de Tocqueville told us about America is that America has always been a populous nation. The way to run for office in this country has always been the same. Run against the central government. We don't like the people in Washington. See, we like them when they were here. The minute we send them there, we stop liking them. Because something happens to them, we think. They become condescending. They become patronizing. They seem to know everything. Their responses are didactic, dogmatic. They become experts. And if anything we don't like in this country is we don't like experts. People that know more and more about less and less till they eventually know everything about nothing. We like regular people. People that mess up. People that have some humility, as long as they own up to messing up. No one understood this concept better than Ronald Reagan. Think for a minute. What were his areas of claimed expertise? I watched this guy. He never claimed to know anything, I'm telling you. In fact, the only thing that he claimed was that he had convictions. Americans like people with convictions, even if they're not the same convictions that we have. See, even when we know they're wrong about this, he's wrong, she's wrong. But you know, this person believes this as a matter of conscience. And so if they don't change, we even tend to admire them. But there was a time when Ronald Reagan got into big trouble. You remember the Iran-Contra affair? I happened to be in Washington at the time, amidst the Beltway, and the print media went insane. The Washington Post in particular. They really took off after Reagan. They said, okay, we got him now. The Teflon presidency is at an end. All right? Forget it. It's all over, thank God. Because there's only one or two possibilities. Number one, the president is actively involved orchestrating criminality. Once again, we got a president who's a crook. Or number two, the man is stupid, a nincompoop, a moron. He didn't even know what's going on around him. And we waited for Reagan to choose between those two. And President Reagan just kept walking, smiling, waving. And then when the media cornered him, he appointed the Tower Commission to look into this matter. So he couldn't speak now because he didn't want to prejudice their findings. And then the Democrats in Congress made a political mistake. They co-opted this whole field. They preempted it. They appointed a special committee headed up by Senator Inoue of Hawaii to look into this matter. And this committee did really a good job. They conducted a very thorough investigation. They subpoenaed documents, witnesses. They held public televised hearings. They wrote their report, which came out 14 months after the event. And the report was disparaging of Reagan. It was a pejorative report. And I remember being in Washington at the time. There was enormous pressure on President Reagan to get on television and to respond to the adverse conclusions of this report. And I finally heard he took airtime. I was excited. He was going to be on television that night. I ran out. I got 22 pads of paper, 66 sharpened pencils. I was sitting in front of my TV set thinking this would be a historic speech. And suddenly he comes on. He does that walk, you know, to build up the tension, walks to that podium, looks out into his audience, the American people. You know, not the people in the room, the media, looks beyond them to this vast nation. And he said, I don't know. I didn't understand. I didn't know what I knew and I forgot. Or maybe I never even knew. Now, how did people react to that? People didn't get upset. They said, well, you can't know everything. The guy's getting old. Give him a break. See, what Reagan did was he hit on an old American cliche, American chestnut, our value. Hey, this was still a land of opportunity. Anybody could be president around here. If this guy can do it, there's hope for your kid who's being miserable right now. And so what Reagan did was he gave people some hope. He hit into the values of his constituency. Now, I'm not talking about President Reagan per se or anybody. I'm talking about you and your style. I'm saying your style should be a soft style. Hey, and I had mentioned Pope John Paul II. Look, Pope John Paul, in terms of content, is not reading from the same hymn book as his constituency, American Roman Catholics. What do I mean? He is against the death penalty in every single instance. He will not execute Tim McVeigh. Pope John Paul II is against the use of contraceptive devices under any circumstances. American Roman Catholics are for the death penalty. American Roman Catholics not only are for contraceptive devices, they use them. Yet, if you were to ask these people, his constituency, how do you feel about this person? He's very high up on the esteem level. See, what is it? It's the kind of life he seems to live. It's the humility. It's the fact that he seems to be sincere, genuine, even maybe wrong, but nevertheless. Hey, and that registers so much with the people you're trying to influence. And so, I'm saying to you, one of the best styles that you can have is a humble, human style that starts out cooperative. I like to say that you always should start amicably with a low-key pose of calculated incompetence. Now, if you start cooperative with people, it's easy to go from cooperative to competitive. Can't you toughen up along the way? Absolutely. If on the other hand, though, you start competitive, it's very hard to go back the other way. You see, you start out with a threat and say, look, I'm going to tell you the way it is. If you don't do what the heck I want, okay, I'm going to do my best to destroy you and your career. Perhaps I came on a bit strong. I may have misspoken a word or two. See, you don't overcome that particular credibility gap. And so, it's very important to be sensitive to your style and the way your style registers with the party you're trying to influence. Now, I also want you to remember that negotiating is a mixed mode of game. All negotiations involve commonality and conflict. You can't have one without the other. As the greatest living philosopher of our time, Lily Tomlin, once said, we're all in this together by ourselves. And as usual, she got it right. You understand what I mean by everything involves commonality and conflict. Look, if I walked into this room, one of you came up to me earlier this evening and said, look, I've just come back from Guayaquil, Ecuador. I met a guy there who doesn't like you. In fact, he's got this list of grievances against you, which you showed me. I could resolve all these grievances. I could explain them away and satisfy this person. I said, where is this person? Well, he's currently in solitary confinement. He'll be incarcerated forever. Now, do you believe that I would hop the next plane to Guayaquil, Ecuador to straighten this out, which I could? You don't know me. My attitude would be, forget it, you know? I'm not doing that. See, why am I not doing that? There's conflict, all right. See, there's conflict, but there's no commonality. See, there's no reason for me to resolve this in my mind. And by the same token, if there's no conflict, you got nothing to negotiate about. Therefore, every single negotiation involves commonality and conflict. You can't have one without the other. Now, this leads to an important question. If that's true, what do you start negotiating first? Commonality or conflict? Commonality, absolutely. See, you meet the other side, you talk about the weather, you talk about the thing on the front page of the newspaper, you talk about your family, my family, how you doing, how you feel, and then you move on to the smallest issue. A small issue they could easily resolve. Something that's not emotional, something that you can get agreement on, and you resolve it. You move on to the next issue, another small issue. Hey, resolve that, another small, easy one. And you save for the very end, the zero-sum issues. What I mean by that is the fixed sum issue. Anything that's quantifiable would be zero-sum. Hey, like rate, price, salary, term, duration. You can put it in a number form. And even that stuff, the zero-sum issues, you try to fractionate it, splinter it, break it down. When will the money be paid? What form will the payment take? What if a payment is missed? How will we deal with that? See, what you're trying to do is get people to invest in the process. Because the more they invest, the harder it is for them to divest. Rats and human beings have this in common. The more energy expended to achieve a particular goal, the more desirable that goal tends to become. Look, you buy 2 stocks, you make 2 investments. One goes up, one goes down. Which one are people more likely to sell first? They sell the one who went up. No, they sell the one who went up. Not that they should, they do. How about the one who went down? What do they do with that? They keep it. They hang on to it, waiting for it to go back up. You know what a lot of us do? Who are shrewd, who we think we're shrewd financially, we buy more of the one that went down. Why? If the price is good before, hey, look at it now. See, that is the investment principle. And the investment principle will really prove to be the foundation for closure. Now, what if you mess up in negotiations? You make an error. By the way, all negotiations involve how and what. See, I am nice on the how. I am forthcoming on the how. I am congenial on the how. I make concessions and maybe they don't even reciprocate. It's okay. But on the what, I measure that because that's the content. That's my bottom line. That's my profit. Now, what if people mess up on the how? They make a mistake. They say something they shouldn't have said. And by making concessions on the how, I mean like where's the meeting going to be, how many people, what time, how should we dress, all that stuff I'll give them. Have them work for it a little bit, but ultimately I'm willing to give them. Now, what if someone says something insulting? What if you blurt something out? You did something inappropriate. You know what you do? You apologize. And when you apologize 100%. Even you feel you were provoked. They provoked me, so I'm only partially wrong. You still, if you're going to apologize, 100%. I learned this lesson early in life when I first got married. I used to be very intellectual. You wouldn't have recognized me. I was a different guy. I was much taller, more intellectual, and very rational in my behavior. My wife and I would have an argument, and although I was 82% wrong, I knew she was 18% wrong. So I asked forgiveness for the 82, wanted her to ask forgiveness for the 18. This didn't work, by the way. We had strained relationships for many years. Finally, I learned, if you're going to apologize, you apologize 100%. I was 100% wrong. 100%. You were 0%. I am so sorry. And watch when you do this. The other side is waiting for you to say, however, but, because we know what that means. However and but means strike that. Everything I just said is baloney. Here's the real message. William Clinton, our former president, found this out. Remember in August of 1999, finally he's coming clean to the American people. He's on television and he's telling them, well, his deposition exactly, and he did things, and he does a nice job explaining that, saying he's sorry. Then he uses the word however, and he proceeds to attack Ken Starr for the next 15 minutes. It never counted as an apology with the American people. Remember, he had to meet with 12 other religious groups to make the same apology all over again. So I'm saying, if you mess up, apologize all the way. Now, one of the things you want to do in negotiations is try to broaden the gauge. Remember I said to you earlier, you're different than I am. You don't value things the same way. 30 years ago, I was writing down as a little exercise for myself my own priorities in life, what I wanted to achieve in life. I was number 1, 2, 3, and I put the thing away. 20 years later, I found the piece of paper, and I looked at it, and I realized that my number 1 priority wasn't the number 1 priority. It was like number 3. My number 5 had moved to number 2. Some were off the list. New things were on the list, which means kind of I've changed what I want. Now, if I'm different over years, compare me to her or him. Right now, I'm different. You see? Now, what does that mean? That means if you can broaden the gauge in negotiation, talk about more stuff. Indeed, the most difficult thing to negotiate in the entire world is a single issue item when that single issue is zero sum, like money, rate, price. Therefore, you want to try to do is broaden the gauge. Find more stuff to talk about. And you can do that, remember, because you can gather information. They're multifaceted, unique. They're different from you. So the key is when you broaden the gauge to take something that he values at 1 and he gives it to me because I think it's 3. I'll take something that I value at 2, give it to him because he thinks it's 4. Get what I'm saying? So you really get value added. You get synergy. You get an extra benefit. Let me give you an example of this. I'll tell you a true story from my own life. 30 years ago, my wife Ellen and I are walking around in Vail, Colorado. It's a beautiful day in Vail, Colorado. Gorgeous, the snow and the sun. We said, wouldn't it be nice if we could own a place like this around here? We go to a realtor. Realtor takes us out. We see a beautiful condominium we like. We want to get this condo. It's $80,000. We go back to the realtor's office. Myself, my wife, my teammate, my partner, and the realtor. I'm discussing strategy with my teammate. I say, look, they want 80. I will open with 73. I see what they come back with, and then I make the necessary adjustments. As I'm saying this to her, I notice the woman's head is down, her eyes are closed, her head begins to move, and words come forth. She says, listen, Herbert, I don't think these people here will appreciate your little games. I don't think haggling and chiseling has come this far west yet. If you want to make a fool of yourself, go right ahead, but do not involve me. I said, what are you talking about? These people here love negotiating. In fact, if you knew about the history of Colorado, you would know that negotiating started for America in Colorado. Two guys were panning for gold. They were both down in their luck, and they decided to swap pans. In fact, the guy with the older pan had to throw in a glove. Right after that swap, they both struck gold. And the word spread, and all over, everybody was wheeling and dealing, trading. And that's how negotiating started in America. Well, this woman does not believe a word I'm saying. She knows me. However, the realtor decides to intervene on her behalf for some reason. The realtor says, Mr. Cohen, your wife is absolutely right. We of Val feel that when we of Val, already I detest this person. So I don't like people that throw around the royal we. As far as I'm concerned, there's only two categories of people have the right to use the royal we. Number one, genuine members of royalty. The Queen, right? Chuck, Phil, even Fergie, that whole group is fine. The second category would be those people who within their bodies have active tapeworms. Other than that, I'm kind of resenting this stuff. But this person is going on, well, we of Val feel when we in Val ask for 80, we in Val expect to get 80. I said, is that right? Last time I looked, Val is in America, and we in America, if we wanted 80, we would ask for 90. That's the American way. I'm not convincing either of them. They got each other. They're hanging tough. Proving I'm a flexible person, I said, okay, offer $76,000. The realtor says, Mr. Cohen, I'm insulted by that. I think it would be unethical, unprofessional for me to offer that kind of money. By the way, if you've ever encountered this, you say to them, is there another realtor around here less ethical and less professional? So, eventually, the realtor agrees, knowing it won't be accepted, and goes out to offer the money. That afternoon, the realtor returns, and she's smiling. And I'm thinking, hey, maybe I got it, She's smiling because she says to me, Mr. Cohen, as I told you, was absolutely right. Right, no one offered less than 80. In fact, I have two offers right here, prospective contracts for $80,000. I look at this, I can't believe it. I look at the thing, 80. Well, that's it, I'm out of this, I'm thinking, wow. People have said to me, over the years, they interview you very often, the media types, and they say, have you ever failed in a negotiation? And the answer to that is, of course. In fact, you learn a lot more from failure and setbacks than you do from success, because successes teach you how to do this, to kiss your hands or something. Thank you so much, I was wonderful. But failure is the potential for growth. And they try to get you to describe, your failure, but I usually try to forget my failure, block it out, blame it on other people. Because I remember in this veil situation saying to my wife, I'm glad I didn't get it. In fact, the reason I didn't get it was the Lord intervened on my behalf. The Lord didn't want me to have this place. The Lord knows that when you live among dummies that offer 80 when they ask for 80, the association alone would cause your IQ to drop and make you an imbecile. Second of all, I know I can get something very comparable to this, better than this, for less around Columbus, Ohio. So, psychologically, I'm withdrawing. As I'm doing so, my wife begins to speak. Once again, Herbert, you have ruined the quality of our life. This has always been your problem. You don't listen to people. You don't take advice. That's why we don't own any property. You're constantly traveling. If we own property, and this is a capitalist system. If we were capitalists, we own property in the Rockies. We wake up in the morning and we see it snowed out west. We watch it in the Today Show. Overnight, while we slept, money poured in. But no, not you. Not the American way. I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, the rest of my life I can't watch a weather forecast. And I remember being upset by this, and I remember saying to her and her wee friend, the realtor, You know, I'm going to prove to both of you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm going to get this place for 76. And people have said to me over time, did you know something? I knew nothing, but I blurted it out. In fact, the minute I said it, I wanted to retrieve it. See, my problem is, how am I going to buy this thing for $76,000 when two people have already offered 80? Up until this point, I'm doing exactly what I tell you not to do. See, I see the other side in one dimension. I say, who's the seller? The seller's a money coveter. Therefore, the person that offers the most money gets the deal. But I've told you, people are not one-dimensional. People have other needs. I asked this realtor, who's the seller? They didn't know. They refer me to the listing broker. The listing broker did know. The seller turns out to be two people. It's a husband and wife. They both work for an energy company in Denver. The company has just transferred them to Zurich. They're going to open an office in the Bahnhofstrasse in Zurich in Switzerland. They've been given a 25-year contract and told it'll probably be permanent for 40 years. These people have sold their home, their permanent home in Denver, Vale's a weekend home. They're selling out, they're closing bank accounts. They're leaving the country. They're cutting their ties with the United States. And now I look at the contracts, which, by the way, I had all along, but just saw the 80. Now I start reading them, and I realize that both offers made subject to the prospective buyers obtaining a mortgage at a certain rate within a particular period of time. In other words, there's a condition preceding to this even coming into being. And we all know of situations in our life where people thought they had a deal, only to find out, no deal, because the condition doesn't occur. If you say to me, how often does that happen? I say, I don't know, maybe 22 times in the history of Western civilization, but we think it happens a lot. And so I now know what to do. I'm thinking, this seller has another need, the need for certainty, the need to know that when they leave these shores, they will not get a cablegram at an ungodly hour, 5 a.m. in Zurich. Congratulations, place in Vale, back on market. And so I knew what to do. I went in there and I offered them $76,000. No mortgage, no conditions, cash, right on the table. I got it. I got the condo. And the next day I ran around like crazy trying to get a mortgage. I had no money. Now, the reason I tell you this is because I still own that condo, which, by the way, has appreciated somewhat. And to point out to you, I, who knew all this stuff academically, was violating the very things that I'm telling you. And see, and occasionally you have to realize you're under stress, you're under pressure, you tend to stereotype the situation. Step back and recognize there's so many more possibilities. You know, get less emotionally involved. And so it's now time for us to take, I guess, a break to satisfy your maintenance and hygiene needs. And remember, one of my messages of the evening is you want to approach things with equilibrium. I said to you earlier, you want to care, but not that much. Same thing is true with trust. You want to trust, but not that much. Indeed, let me quote to you from the Quran, where it says, trust in Allah, but always tie up your camel. Let's break, and then we'll come back. Thank you. People ask me about the book that some of you have. It's called You Can Negotiate Anything. It has always been sold for 21 years in bookstores. It never went out of print. You can get it in paperback, trade, or even hardback. I personally don't care whether you buy the book or not. I didn't bring books. I don't sell books. I care, but not that much. All right. Also, I'm going to try to give you as much information as I can. And when we conclude, I certainly welcome your questions. So that's kind of like the format I have, if you don't mind. All right. I was saying to you earlier that it's important to look at the environment and to understand whether it's collaborative environment, competitive environment, how the other side perceives the situation. Because if you're in a competitive environment where it's adversarial, an example of this would be the negotiations over the Mideast peace between the Israelis and the PLO. Bill Clinton, our president, whose timetable was much shorter because he wanted to come up with an agreement before he left the presidency, brought Ehud Barak, the Prime Minister of Israel, Yasser Arafat, the leader of the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, to Washington, D.C., and he convinced Barack not to play the game. Don't play the game. Make him the best possible offer you can. Make him an offer that was ever made before, and maybe we can close this deal fast. But this is a competitive environment. And when you're in a competitive environment, when you give somebody something too quick, it's not appreciated. In fact, concessions are not appreciated unless they're worked for. And so Barack makes this offer, which is the best offer ever made. It raises the expectations of Arafat. He turns it down, and you get into a big stalemate and the beginning of the Intifada. So I'm saying to you, map the environment. That situation was virtually predictable. Now we come to the question of how do you close a deal? How do you get deals to close and stick? There are 4 criteria for this. Number 1, there's got to be sufficient investment. And the sufficient investment means there will not be remorse on either side. The next thing is that you must furnish some sort of basis for comparison. How do I know I'm doing okay? Help the other side to understand this. Number 3 is you want to bring down the curtain slowly. Signal them by your concessions that this is the end. And 4 is get them involved. Provide options or choices. Give the other side a sense of mastery, because people support that which they help create. Let me give you an example of all of this. A question that I was asked about. Someone asked me whether this applies to buying a car, a new car. Virtually all of you in this room, in the course of your lifetime, have bought new cars or will have the opportunity to engage in this activity. I myself have done this many times. It is not something that I enjoy anymore, okay? I've done it already. However, I'm a member of a family. I'm sitting around on a Friday night. My spouse walks in and says to me, looks at me, vegetating, and says, "Mr. Negotiator." By the way, this is not a term of endearment in my household. "Mr. Negotiator, the family needs a car. Why don't you go out and deal with your people?" According to her, my people are used car dealers. Now, the first thing I try to do is get out of this. I don't know anything about cars. You know what I mean? You need information. You got to look up data. You got to use the internet and what have you. I don't have time. And she says to me, "Look, I solved this problem for you because my friend down at the corner has a husband who's not like you. He cares about her. He already went out and negotiated for the car for her that I want. You to go in there. He knows you're coming. Give him this business card, the salesman. He'll sell you the same car at the pre-negotiated price." I know this is not going to work, but the next morning she's got me up. I go out to the car dealer. I walk in. I meet the salesman. He sees his business card. He says, "That's my car," but I don't know who wrote the numbers in the back and the amount I'm supposed to pay. But he definitely wants to show me a car. He takes me into the showroom. In the showroom, you see these beautiful cars, it's shiny. But as I approach the car, I become a little nervous because I see the sticker price. The sticker price is literally stuck to the car. See, I have a flashback. I remember the last time I bought a car, how long it took me to scrape this off. So I know this guy didn't just put this thing on. And the sticker price never says you can have this car for $35,000, $40,000. It always says $38,719.11. They got it to the penny. And the last 2 things are state and local taxes. So you feel, gee, if I knock off anything here, the revenue people are after me. So I don't know what to do. I start walking around the car. I rub the hood. I kick a tire, open and close the door. The guy drops the price, $3,000. So what do? I rub the hood. I open and close the door. I kick a tire. He goes down $2,000. I open and close. I kick the tire. The guy goes down $1,000. Then he takes $350 out of his own pocket, the bread from his children's mouth, his commission, and he gives it to me. I'm always moved by that gesture. I take $100 out of my personal allowance, I give it to him. And now we're only $100 apart. And suddenly, the salesman starts playing the game. See, heretofore had been speaking to me in a normal fashion. I hear every word he's saying. Suddenly, he's dropped his voice, and I'm leaning in. He's moving around like he's checking overhead surveillance. And then he begins to speak to me through the side of his mouth. He speaks to me this way. By the way, whenever that happens, I become alarmed. I think he had a stroke. Are you all right? Can I get you a glass of water? You want to sit down? Why is this man speaking to me through the side of his mouth? Because he has learned over the years that offers me through the side of the mouth have 27% more credibility than offers made up front. And now he says to me, because he likes me so much, we've become so close in these 20 minutes, he's going to show me something only I'm going to get to see. This is a document that's under lock and key. It's printed. It's the actual factory invoice price of the car. He opens up the desk drawer, slides it out, and shows me this document. And according to this document, every car the dealer sells at this price, he loses $11 a car. I said, well, how can he do that and stay in business? He says, he makes it up in volume. No. I tell him, look, I need the other $100. This is embarrassing, to pay more than the neighbor. I need the other 100. And he says to me, something all of you've heard this. I don't have the authority to give you the other 100. And all of us respond in the same way, as if we're on cruise control. We say, who has the authority? And they always point out there somewhere. There's a salesman upstairs, sales manager. There's a dealer out in a shack with the authority. He said, well, go see the dealer in the shack. Get me the $100. He said, the dealer lives out there in a shack with 3 dogs, 2 Doberman Pinschers and a German Shepherd. I'm afraid of dogs. I don't know if life is just, I don't care what your problem is. I tell him, look, I need the other $100. He's fearful. Look, finally I get him to go to see the dealer to get me the other 100. And he walks out normally. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm waiting. I'm about to walk out when I think I hear dogs barking. No, it can't be. And the salesman returns. When he returns, he's limping. His tie is askew. He's perspiring. His voice is hoarse like he'd been beat up. He says, look, I spoke to the guy in the back. And the guy in the back says, the best he's going to do is $33. At this point, I really feel annoyed. I feel like I've been taken. I have a flashback, a deja vu. How did I allow myself to get into this? My first reaction is annoyance, alienation. I'm walking out of here. I'm going across the street where they're selling the same cars. But then I think about that. Tell me, why don't I go across the street? Because of my investment. I investment in time, energy, aggravation with this guy. See, if I go across the street, I start all over again. I'm back to square number 1 with the new guy. See, I lose my investment. So what keeps me there is the investment principle. The second thing keeps me there is the certainty principle. As bad as this guy is, I know how bad he is. Who knows what the guy across the street is living with in the back? Maybe reptiles. Then I have another option. I would go home, tell my wife about this. She and I form a task force, do some research, buy some Alpo, some puppy chow. Why waste our time with the salesman? We can go over his head. Why waste your time with the monkey? We can speak to the organ grinder, the dealer. And then you start thinking, how much time, how much energy, how much do I do this cost-benefit analysis calculus, and you say, to hell with it, I'll take it. Now, why does that deal close? Because of the criteria I just mentioned to you. Number 1, there's sufficient investment. 2, the salesman furnished a basis of comparison for you. See, how do I know I've done well? Well, compared to sticker price, compared to factory invoice price, you gave a person a criteria of measurement. He brought down the curtain slowly. Look how the concessions were made. $3,000, $2,000, $1,000, $350, $33, $100, $33 from the guy in the back. You know what I'm saying? It's like a fire hose is spurting water, less water, drip, drip, drip. At the end, you're seeing drops. He signaled to you, it's over. That's how you can convey to the other side to stop negotiating. And last of all, they got you involved in the process, and they provided for you options and choices, and that's how deals tend to close. Now, let me, if I can, talk to you about a simple negotiation, because many of you say, you know, I'm kind of timid, awkward, lack confidence in starting. I'll give you a simple negotiation and go on about it. My wife and I, 10 years ago, find ourselves in Rome, Italy. I'll tell you where we're staying, because this is an actual story. We're staying at the Excelsior Hotel on the Via Veneto, right next to the American Embassy. The American Embassy dead ends at this point, but if you were to walk from that dead end straight ahead, 2 blocks straight, and then the road turns to the left, there is an art store there, a place that sells paintings and sculpture. The two of us are wandering around one day, got a lot of time. We're walking around. We see this store, and in the window there is this beautiful painting. See, we know it because of the way the light hits it. So we got time to kill, we walk into the store. We are greeted by the proprietor, who gives us an effusive greeting in Italian. I respond with a hearty buongiorno, exhausting my knowledge of Italian in the process. The store manager, the dealer, says to us, "Is there anything we see in the store we like?" Both of us point to the painting in the window. He says, of course you point to that. You like that. You know that? I said, He says, that's a Briante. You know Briante? I said, no. He says, Carlo Briante. I said, no. He says, Carlo is the foremost Italian impressionistic painter. You know the Italian impressionistic school. I said, no, I didn't even know there was one. But I should have figured there would be one, because I knew there was a French and they would come here on vacation, you know, and talk it up, and that's how I think culture is disseminated. He said, well, everybody knows a Briante. Would you like to buy this Briante? I said, well, if we could afford it, yeah. He says, the Briante is only 7 million lira. A long time ago I learned I can't afford to buy anything in lira. Whether it's Italian lira or Turkish lira or Malta lira. I don't know how people live in lira. Whenever anyone says to me lira, I always say the same thing. How much in American dollars? And I ask this guy. He anticipates the question. He's cupping a calculator. He goes, American dollars? This is 7,200 American dollars. I said, for the painting? He says, yes. I said, now, if I buy this painting now, I have to pay $7,200? No. You buy now. Could be $6,700. I said, I buy this now and I pay you like money, cash. How much would it be then? He said, well, you buy now, you pay cash? I said, yeah, $6,300. I said, what would I get with the painting? He said, what do you mean what you get? I said, well, one of the things that makes it so beautiful in the window is it's got this beautiful frame, this handmade frame, and it got this light which hangs over, illuminating the painting. Would it come with the light in the frame? He says, of course. I said, good. I don't need the light, I don't need a frame. How much now? He says, no light and no frame, $5,500. I said, that's still too much. Look at me, look at the way I'm dressed. I didn't even walk right, you know. That much money? He said, wait, are you perchance a tourist? I felt like saying, no, I'm a neighborhood guy. I'm surprised you didn't recognize me. I was born and raised around the corner. But I didn't say that. I didn't smarten off. I said, yes, I am a tourist. He says, well, I have for you a tourist discount. For you, $4,800 because you're a tourist. I said, gee, I really appreciate that, but it's still too much. He said, wait, let me look at your face. You do not have much bone structure. Are you perchance Siciliano Americano? I says, no. He says, yes, you are. I tell by your face. Your family is from Agrigento. Never be ashamed of your heritage. So, I'm going to give you a special Siciliano Americano discount, $3,800. I said, gee, that's, nice, but there's still a lot. Why does Briante cost so much? He says, because Carlo is the master of the school. Carlo paint this. He painted, and he signed this. He signed in orange. Carlo Briante. I said, wait a second. Is it possible that Carlo painted one? And just before he's about to sign, the wife calls him, Carlo, lunch. And he don't sign. You got any of those around? He says, this is Italy. The wife calls, they don't come. You know? But he says, we got for you Simonette. I said, who's Simonette? He says, Simonette is a pupil from Briante. And he goes in the back, and he brings out this enormous museum-sized painting. He and another guy are carrying it. This is Giovanni Simonette. See, sign down here in purple. Giovanni Simonette. He's not Briante, but looks like a Briante. I says, how much for a Simonette? This gigantic Simonette. He says, $2,800. Yes, yeah, but with my discounts. You know what I mean? Take them off too. I don't need the light. I don't need the frame. My tourist discounts, my heritage discount, you know, for the people in Sicily. He says, all right, $1,200 for this. I said, you got a smaller Simonette. He goes in the back. He brings out a baby Simonette, little one. I said, how much is it? He said, with your discounts, $600. I said, okay. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy the master of the school, Carlo Briante, okay? Giovanni Simonette, gigantic, humongous, and baby. All three, right now. Give me the rock-bottom geological semanticism price. All three right now. I'm going to put cash into your business. I'm going to reduce your inventory. I'm going to energize this endeavor. I'm going to create more flow. I'm going to make it dynamic. Give me the best possible price. And the guy's figuring, $1,400. At this point, the seller's fingers must be exhausted. He needs a respite. He turns to myself and my wife. He says, would you and the lovely lady like some cappuccino? We say, yeah. Goes off in the back to get the cappuccino. At this point, my wife Ellen, who has not said a word for 30 minutes, uncharacteristic behavior, you know, turns to me and says, what the hell are you doing? I says, I don't know, but whatever it is working like crazy. Now, I ultimately bought all three for about that price, about $1,400. I brought these paintings back to the United States, where I hung them in an apartment that I had in Washington, D.C. And by the way, I try to get the same kind of frames and light that I saw in Rome, particularly for the Briante, which I was very proud of. A friend of mine who's a celebrity had a book party, and I allowed him to use that apartment. And they invited many notable people in the D.C. area. And there was a publicist there, and I got there and, you know, spoke to her. And I said, who's coming? She showed me the list of people. One name struck me as significant. It was the curator of Western art from the National Gallery of Art. I said, when this guy walks through, I want to see who he is. You know, tell him, you know, point him out to me. And she did. He comes through. I walk up to him. I said, hi, I'm Herb Cohen. He says, never heard of you. I don't care. He says, I want a drink. I said, no. Before you get a drink, I want you to see this completely sober. I actually pulled the guy by the arm, dragged him around the bend, stood him 5 feet away from the Briante, which was in the dark. Tried to get his attention and then flicked on the switch. And the light shone out on a painting. It was magnificent. The way it hit his eyes. It was like an Elvis on velvet. And I turned to him and I said, huh? What do you think? He said, what is it? I said, what is it? It's Carlo Briante. He said, who's he? Who's he? He's the master of the Italian Impressionistic School of Art. He says, I never heard of it. He said, I'm familiar with the French, but, you know, in any event, I am the largest single owner of paintings from the Italian Impressionistic School of Art. And you could say that I captured the market for my country in a spirit of patriotism. Now, what happened there in that particular encounter? See, these are simple points I want to make about negotiations. Number one, try to have fun in negotiations. Why? Because it could be very stressful, it could be aggravating. Don't take anything for real that much. Don't take yourself for real. Happiness is not doing what you like, it's liking what you do. So try to have fun in all of these situations. 2, remember again that negotiations is a mixed motive game. All negotiations, remember, involve commonality and conflict. You always start with commonality. Try, if you can, to refashion the deal. So say to the other side, what if? Supposing. Is there another way of looking at this? What do you think? When they say something, see, they say the price. Most people, you know what they do? They say, well, I can't pay it, I'll pay this. Don't do that. Say, how'd you come up with that? I didn't understand that. Can you explain it to me? You get what I'm saying? You want more information. You want to get at their underlying concerns, interests, and needs. And never, ever disparage the product. I have seen people who go in to buy a home, and they could only pay a certain amount, and this house costs more. They think that they're going to get the seller to sell it to them by pointing out to the seller the defects in the house. Don't you think the seller knows better than you? They've lived in this house. So they say things like, how many children do you have? 3? And you only have 1.5 baths? How'd you live that way all these years? You know, it's unsanitary, unhygienic. And this, I notice you have a frayed carpeting here by the fireplace in the living room. Hey, that's where the family gathers every Christmas Eve and sings Silent Night. And you're wrapping that stuff? So you're better off saying, I love the house. I love the product. I love the product. In fact, what you're asking for is probably worth it for this. I admire it. I admire the workmanship. I admire the house. But we're young people. We're just starting out. This is all we got. Help us. That tends to work out pretty well. Remember to use time. Biggest mistake that people make is they try to get things resolved too quickly. If you can live with ambiguity and a degree of uncertainty, please, by all means, do that. You go in to buy a car, you know, and for years, car dealers, they say to me, well, we can't do it at this price, so why don't you take my card and, you know, get back to me when you change your mind. I never take anybody's card. I say, let me give you my card, okay? And if you change your mind, give me a call. See, what's going to happen to that salesman? Right now, the saleswoman is sitting on top of the world. But even the earth has been known to rotate every 24 hours. By that I mean, they've made their quota. Next month, suddenly they're behind. They need 2 more sales. And they're not operating from a position of strength anymore. They call you up, they cut the price, they cut their commission. But you got to be prepared to wait. You got to force yourself to be more patient. Remember, quick is always risky. It is risky for the side that's less prepared, the side that can determine equity. Now, I mentioned earlier the importance of differentiating yourself. Try to be unique. Try to go against the grain. And remember, operate within your own comfort level. Remember, there are things that I find I could do, you can't do. But the stuff that you can do, I can't do. So do the stuff you're comfortable with. Be you, because you could be the best you possible. And by the way, that affects the outcome. For example, years ago, I read this survey about people stopped in Florida for traffic tickets. They were stopped by radar, and received traffic tickets. Because they found out that the radar doesn't know the difference of gender, yet of the people stopped, 87% of the men got tickets after they were stopped, but only 55% of the women got tickets. Okay? Remember, the radar doesn't know gender. What happened from the time the cop approached the car? Well, think of how a lot of women behave and a lot of men behave. Men sit in the car. They're not getting out. They're cursing under their breath. Okay? And the cops approach on both sides. Tension is up there. High level of stress and drama because they may have a shotgun in the front seat. And then when the cop finally gets there, they roll down the window 2 inches and say something like, "What do you want? What are you stopping me for? They're muggers and rapists around here. Why me?" They get a ticket. Women stopped. What do? They come out of the car, arms open toward the cops. "Officer, am I glad I found you? I was lost." They don't get tickets. So, I'm saying to you, unusual, different things. See, look at who the cop is. Who is this cop? What are his needs? What a concern. Remember I say people are different? Okay. What's this traffic cop been doing all day? He has been sitting all day behind a hedge. He and his buddy. They're bored with each other. They hate each other. He comes home at night to his family. The wife says, how'd the day go? I got 7 speeders, 1 DUI, and 1 reckless driving. Their marriage is going down the drain. And so when you come out with an interesting story, even though they know it's a big put on, they love it. It gives them something to talk about. You don't get the ticket because you're saving a marriage. You're doing God's work here on earth. All right, next point. Listen to the other side and use their own words. See, one of the reasons I tell you to take notes is if you take notes, you hear what they're saying, well, the most important thing. So at the end, when you want to close, you say, remember when you said this? And they said this. It seems to me that a natural follow-up for what you said would be this. All right, remember my Briante story? I say to the guy, why does Briante cost so much, $3,800? He says, Carlo painted it, Carlo signs it. I said, anyone where Carlo didn't sign? Suddenly, where are we? We have expanded the gauge, we're into Briante. Whenever you can expand the gauge, you got more stuff to deal with and more stuff to talk about. So piggyback on the other side's words. Also, always keep your perspective. Life and negotiations tends to be yin and yang. I mean, there's nothing in this world, with a few exceptions, that's totally terrible. For the most part, things are good, things are bad. What's terrible? Terrible things are the loss of a valued relationship. The death of someone you love, that's terrible. Pain, suffering, depression, this is terrible stuff. But money? You worried about money? Money's always been around. It simply changes pockets. In fact, if you want to know what God thinks of money, you look at some of the yahoos he gives it to. So, don't kind of be overwhelmed by this stuff. Try to keep things in perspective. Furthermore, recognize that what gets you in trouble in life with very competitive people is not the stupid things that they do, the petty stuff, little tactics they use and techniques. It's how you react to that stuff. So, if you lighten up and say, this is a game, I'm not going to overreact to any of this junk. See, I care, but not that much. You don't get in trouble. Let me give you an example. Some of you probably remember. 16 years ago, General Motors decided to put Chevrolet engines in Oldsmobile cars. I don't know if you remember this. Now, this was kind of scandalous because they were advertising the Rocket Olds. And now they had a Chevy Mobile. And as a result, a lot of people were annoyed who bought the cars, and they began a class action lawsuit. The lawsuit was taking place in Chicago in federal court before a judge by the name of McGarr. And they tried the case, and the plaintiff's attorneys won. The case then was overturned on appeal, reversed, sent back to the judge, and then he tried the case again. The plaintiff's attorneys again won. It was reversed in favor of General Motors, now back to the judge. This is the third time the judge is going to try the case. He was disgusted with the case. He calls my office and says, would Herb get involved in this? Settle this. I've had it up to here with this case. He tells me I'm supposed to represent plaintiff's attorneys and meet for a negotiating session with General Motors. He's ordered them to be there. We meet in a Hyatt in downtown Chicago. On one side of the table, there are 4 of us. Okay, the plaintiffs, the guys suing. The other side, top executives of General Motors and their law firm, their outside law firm. A firm by the name of Kirkland & Ellis, a very distinguished law firm. In fact, one of the attorneys that was there, a young guy at the time, was named Ken Starr, who later became famous in another case. And he really didn't participate. He was a young guy. And here's the way the negotiation starts. The lead attorney for Kirkland & Ellis, remember I'm saying this is a game. People say things to get you to react. He opens up by saying, I'll tell you guys right away, we resent being here. We would never be here. We would never associate with you despicable people unless the judge personally ordered us to do that. Because we regard lawsuits like this as un-American. You're undermining the American capitalist system. You're putting American workers out of work. This is something that the communists like. You guys are pinkos, left-wingers, fellow travelers. You're traitors to America. And therefore, you're not entitled to get an offer from us. It's blood money. However, the judge told us we have to make you an offer. So we'll make you an offer, but we know what kind of despicable people you are. Whatever we offer you is not going to be any good. So, before we make you the offer that the judge is making us do, you got to agree to accept it. Now, this was done with a complete straight face. And the guy who did it, his face became beet red, like, you know, like he was bald. Like he was like really angry, you know, so like he really meant it. Now, when you hear something in a negotiation you didn't prepare for, you always caucus, recess, you know, because you don't want to respond. Because, you know, some people think you respond one way or another. So you always say, excuse us for a moment, we're going to the John together, it's our team tradition. So, you know, the team, we walk outside into the hallway. And remember, it's a team, but the team has different points of view. One guy says, on our team, big trial man, tell him to shove his offer. We'll try this forever. It's a matter of integrity. Another guy says, look, settle this, anything. I have a home in Lake Geneva. They're foreclosing. My wife's divorcing me. Get me out of this. I'm sorry. Another different opinion. So finally, the only thing you can decide on is I should go back and speak for the group, okay? So we come back into the room, they're seated, my team is seated, and they're waiting, you know, it's like a build up. And I stand up, I remember this. This is 16 years ago, because I remember saying, I am 50 years of age. And when I look back on my life, and look at what's happened to me, I could see I had exhilarating moments, but moments of depression and despair. Maybe for some, life was a stairway to success. For me, it was more like these guys, what the hell? See, what the hell is it? So, you know, they thought like, he's lost it. He has some brain aneurysm. I'm going on, I'm saying, so there were ups and downs, but overall, I classify this as a good life. Good life. And I realized that in this overall good life, I have never received an offer from General Motors. And it still could be a good life. So I decided I'm going to go another 20 years without an offer. Keep your offer, okay? At this point, I didn't finish for more than like 5 seconds. There was silence. The other guy says, okay, we'll make you the offer. We said, no, we don't want the offer. He's got the condition. No condition, we'll make you the offer. And he made us the offer. Now, why did he do that? See, it's nice try. If it works, it works. If it don't work, hey, you go to something else. That's what, you've all experienced these people. These people say things to you like, when you catch them and it doesn't work, hey, you can't help me for trying. You know what I mean? Don't blame me for trying. Nay, no problem. So if you know what's going on and you educate yourself and you're alert and you recognize this is a game and you lighten up, say how you react to this stuff really determines outcomes, and you could change the climate and be more successful as a result. And so what I'm saying to you is that in negotiations, you certainly can have one heck of a lot more fun. You can be more successful, and you could find this as a much more satisfying experience. And so let me just make some concluding remarks before I take questions. This question I think many of you have been asking yourselves as I've been allowed to ramble on for this protracted period of time. And that question is, what is this guy doing here? How did this guy, this mutant aberrational human being, get to this place? Let me tell you how this all came about. My office receives a phone call from a representative of the Learning Annex. They did not speak to me. They will tell you. They did not speak to me because I don't speak to people early on, who wanted me to do business for them. And there's a reason for that. The reason is my fees are astronomical. And there's no way I can honestly justify making the kind of money I do. However, the people in my office, they care, but not that much. You call them up, they throw out any number, by the way, and they throw out that astronomical number, and the way they present it to you, it's accepted. See, they do it like this. This is Herb's standard fee. Now, you would want standard work, wouldn't you? What would that include? A guarantee to show up. Yeah, like that, bam, the deal's made. 95% of the time. 5% of the time, the people are savvy. They say, what are you, crazy? We got Henry Kissinger here for less. I don't even know who those people are. I don't work for them. And so, the representative of this organization calls my office, and they tell them about all the particulars. You get a chance to be in Los Angeles. You have friends here. You get out to the coast, all this good stuff. Weather is better than back east, whatever they tell you. No real energy shortage here at all. You know what I mean? No problems. But my office knows what's coming up. There's going to be a discussion of money. And that could be contentious. They begin to gird their loins. Because that usually occurs when someone says, and what does he want here? What's this going to cost us? Or they use the rhyming couplet. And what would Herb's fee be? See? At this point, astronomical number could be contentious. So what did the people here do? They went against the grain. See, they differentiated this meeting from all others. And I'm saying this is what you want to do. Instead of talking in those terms, okay, what you want, which is going to cost, they said, what would Herb's honorarium be? All right. What the hell is that? I happen to know a little Latin. You translate that in English, it means you're getting less. And the reason I know that is these people are prepared to give you more honor, which is going to leave over less arium. Lucky for my side, the people in my office, they don't know Latin. They dumb. They come back with this standard astronomical number. Your side, instead of saying, what are you, crazy? We don't pay that. That's not what we... They say, he's worth it. He's worth twice as much as that, 3 times as much as that. And if we had that kind of money, believe me, it'll be our privilege, our pleasure, and our honor to pay him that. However, this is all we got in our budget. Does that work? What the hell you think I'm doing here? Thank you all very much. Thank you. At this point, I've ended a little early to give you a chance for questions. So if anybody has anything you'd like to ask publicly, I'll be glad to answer it. Yes, ma'am.
What I do involves selling, and I'm frequently asked the question, is this your lowest price, or what is your best offer? And what I find myself doing is going immediately to the lowest price I can, and then it's either sold or it's not sold.
Okay, now, what do you do in a situation like that? Okay, remember, this is a game. If you deal with experienced people, they know it's a game. They know your initial offer is not the real offer. You understand? Now, what if it is the real offer? See, if you're in a collaborative environment, an environment of trust, you and I deal with each other all the time. We're in business, see? It's a continuing relationship. You sold this guy last month, the month before, you service his deal, the relationship is continuing. With that person, I wouldn't even give him a higher price. I give him the best price I want to give him, okay? I get him involved, though. You got to get him involved and not give it to him right away, but ultimately come up with that. See? So that's really the best price I wanted to give him. And if it's a close personal relationship, it will be accepted that way because of the high level of trust. If you're calling on someone you never met before, you understand? They expect what you say not to be the final price. And if it is the final price, see, you don't have a continuing relationship here, you don't have trust, you're going to blow the deal. So what you got to do is play it in accordance with the environment. See, I know, okay, this would be a good deal, like over here. And if I'm in a competitive environment, I start a little here, I get you involved and let you get here and tailor my deals to meet your particular needs. Is that clear to all of you? That's the way you play it. Yes, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What would you recommend for the Screen Actors Strike?
First of all, I think what you have is You have a lot of gamespersonship there, and then what they're doing is they're pushing to the very end unnecessarily. What I would recommend that they get together, both sides, and there's really enough money there, can easily be worked out, and what you got to do is forget about history. See, people bear resentment from the past. They've been shafting us for 11 years. We'll make that back. We'll look good to the members. So you got a lot of posturing there. If I could get those people together for 3 hours, I work this deal out. It can be done, but there are a lot of reasons why people don't want to. Look, I've been involved in the START arms control negotiations with the Soviet Union. That was hard, I mean, those guys were bad guys. I've been involved, in many hostage situations where I was actually there, where my life was on the line. I've been involved in all sorts of precarious situations. Comparable to that would be the NFL football player strike, the baseball player strike, And you really have people that are inexperienced negotiators. And I know they're there, but they have one experience all the time. And I believe it could be worked out. Now, people don't even try. See, what they've done is they played the deadline. They didn't really do. How many times have they met over the past 2 years? You know what I'm saying? When do they start meeting? If you want to build trust, you can't start meeting 3 hours before the deadline. How much time did they spend? What was the substance of the meetings? No, each side was waiting for the other side to cave in. They're playing Russian roulette with the other side. It's a mistake, because they won't. Because neither side will cave, they'll go right to the end.
But it hurts the actors in the meantime.
Of course it does. Hurts the actors, potentially could hurt the public, hurts the people in business. They won't, because everything's precarious in terms of investment. They're talking about shutting down productions. It makes the future seem uncertain. It's very bad, and certainly it's very bad for this community. And there's a greater impact in this community than there is, in other parts of the country. Des Moines, Iowa, they don't make that many movies there. But it actually affects, seriously, it affects New York City, it affects Miami, Florida, Chicago. Why? They make, people don't realize the amount of money that comes in, it's clean money, into New York and Chicago and, all sorts of other places because of movie production. So it's not just this area, it's not just a Hollywood thing, it's all over. And I think you can have a much more intelligent approach to it. Okay? Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm starting up a practice as a consultant, and I'm nervous about printing my fees because everybody I talk to has a different idea of what fees should be. So what's your advice for people as regards to setting the price of your services? Should it be something printed or should it be something to negotiate?
I think ultimately, you're probably going to have to put something down in writing. I really have not done that, but I've been in this a long time, so I'm probably an exception to that. But I would, I'd say ordinarily, but you see, fees vary. That's why I say things are negotiable. For example, if you lived, let's say, in the LA area and they wanted you to go to Newfoundland, okay, it'd take you like a day to get there. I mean, once in a while I get this call. I get a piece of business, it seems like every year and a half for some reason. It's in Oregon, it's in Bend, Oregon, and it's never in Bend, it's near Bend. So where I am in Washington, you want my fee? For me to go there, it's like unbelievable. You can't get there from here. And, and so they say, well, what's your fee? Well, in Bend, Oregon, it's going to be more than it is to a place that I can get to. Sometimes they want me to go to, right now to Chile. Or sometimes they want you to go to strange like Peru, which you don't want to go to, unless you really, have heavy in life insurance, but you don't go. Peru or Ecuador, it's not the best now. Not to say anything bad about those, but they're a wonderful place. I love the people. David Letterman, I think, got in trouble with Ecuador. So I just remembered. I shouldn't have said that. Yes, so what I would do is put it out there. And try to get some experienced people to help you. I don't know if you're using speakers bureaus or something, but there's a hard business to break into to speak, really. But good luck. Yes?
I'm a new real estate investor, so in the last 2 months I've been throwing offers at these realtors for these properties I'm interested in. And I've put my written offers together. And first of all, I don't really get any response, and I'm continually phoning up people and I'm finding I'm going from 80% offers right up to giving them the asking price. Now they're even convincing me to add on to the asking price. So what am I doing totally wrong?
Probably what you want to try to do is personally contact the people that you want to be in business with. Contact them personally and ask them, get their input. And these are the people that are going to be your contacts. Get them involved. Say, look, I'm starting out. Maybe you could help me. So they see you. They see who you are. See, if you try to do something with a circular, anything, or with a phone call, it's easy for people to say no. For example, which are longer in durations? Telephone negotiations or face-to-face? Which are longer? Face-to-face, okay? Which are more competitive, telephone or face-to-face? Telephone. It's easy for people to say no to you on the phone. Yeah, what does he want? I'm sorry, thanks for calling. Nothing. Supposing I come in person. I walk in there, right? What a trip. I'm exhausted. My car's double parked outside. My wife, my kids, I hope they don't tow here. Please help me. Tell me it's easy for this guy to say no to me. He says no to me, I hang on to his arm. He got to drag me out of here. He put rug burns on my body. I mean, I could be so upset I'd throw up all over him. You know, who the hell? I have a heart attack, sprawl across his body. You get what I'm saying? So if you got something really important where you don't want to know for an answer, go to see him and personalize this. See, let them see you. Like, people get rejected if they negotiate for large entities. For example, on behalf of the real estate board, screwed her. I don't care about the real estate. You know what I mean? On behalf of IBM, on behalf of the state of California, we got a problem. Who cares? But if you say, look, I'm asking, I mean, you told me, you promised, you understand? I told my mother-in-law, she was over, and she, you know, and don't let me, please. People will go along with that stuff. You understand? So these are people you're going to need in business. See, right now they're getting numbers. They're rejecting your numbers. It's easy. Yes, forget it. No. But so what you want to do is differentiate yourself, differentiate your property, ask them for help, get them involved. Yes. Yes.
I want to ask you about your experience. You've been in major situations with hostages, etc. How has it affected your confidence if you've lost in that sort of major incident and have lost hostages?
To be honest with you, I've never been in a situation where we've lost hostages. In fact, you'll be surprised by this, that in hostage situations in North America in the last 20 years, there's maybe been just a few cases where, you know, once the law enforcement people were there, a hostage negotiating team, that violence ever occurred to the hostage. Now, the hostage takers sometimes, but if you follow certain basic rules of hostage negotiation, it usually works out exceptionally well for you. I mean, our track record is unbelievable. See, that's why Waco was a disaster, because Waco, they didn't follow the rules. Well, the rules are time is in your favor. You don't rush, you don't use the SWAT team, you don't assault, and you don't use violence as long as the hostages are not being hurt. The only thing that can precipitate violence on the part of the law enforcement people, if there's a reasonable threat that you'll kill hostages or harm hostages or one gets killed, then there's an assault. Things are out of the hostage negotiation. Now look, Waco, they assaulted that facility in April. Why did they do it? They did it because guys in the SWAT team tend to be a little crazy sometimes. Because, I'll tell you why, okay, that's like a smart aleck statement. Because the tobacco, group, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, ATF, lost 5 people initially in attempting to assault that building. And when you lose people, you become very emotional, you lose buddies. And so there's a lot of conflict and infighting there. And the SWAT team, they want to get it over with. Get these son of a gun. I'm not talking to this guy. The guy's a murderer, And then you start hearing rumors they're killing kids, But look, it's April. They're in Waco, Texas. There's no air conditioning. You understand? Wait till September. They'll be coming out. You understand? But people, particularly Americans, are not patient. They want instant satisfaction, instant gratification. You got to force yourself to be patient. And so, to answer your question, I'm saying in these situations, if you really do the right thing, you come out of this much better than than you even thought. See, in other words, the objective is, and you got to keep this in mind, it is always, when in a hostage situation, to safeguard the lives of the hostages. That's the primary goal, okay? And number two, it's to not really violate the law with respect to the suspect, the criminal, or whatever you want to call that person. You shouldn't be harming that person, although there are instances where they do harm that person, because it's up to the individual law enforcement person. But see, we changed the way hostage situations are handled. See, years ago, 40 years ago, a guy would take a hostage, run to the top of a building. Cops would respond, surround it with tanks. They get this guy in a bullhorn. Okay, Joey, we got you surrounded. Let him go. And Joey was stupid. He was literal. He let the guy go. The guy would floor 16 floors. So we've learned from that. See, what we've learned is, what you do is you move the perimeter around, military, police, you keep them out of sight, and you keep the stress level and tension level low. And then you send in a negotiator, see? And a negotiator should not be a guy in uniform to threaten him, but should be like a guy like me, a dumpy guy, not in uniform with a baseball hat, who kind of says, hey, they sent me in here to talk to you. See? I'm not kidding. See, someone that won't threaten him. By the way, almost 40% of the hostage negotiators in the United States are women. So the guy comes in and says, well, see, remember, what you're trying to do is use time. By the way, why do you want to use time? Because in over a period of time, the hostage taker identifies with the hostage and sees the villain as the people outside. You get what I'm saying? In fact, originally he thinks this guy's a capitalist, but then he got his wallet and he sees he owes 2 car payments. He's behind on his mortgage. He got an old mother with arthritis that lives in Arizona, and he's a pathetic jerk, and he suddenly sees him as representing capitalism. So once that happens, see, it's really hard for him to harm the hostages, or more difficult. So this guy comes in, so he's using time. He's saying, look, I guess you're hot in here. It's warm here. He goes, yeah, it's warm. Because, by the way, one of the first things they do at an airplane when a guy takes it, they have the police shut off the air conditioning. No one ever makes this, relationship. That's why. So this guy comes, it's hot in here, right? He says, yeah, it's hot. Will you like the air conditioning turned on? Yeah. Well, if you release the children, we would do that. So you start this give and take, the swap. And then what they do is they say, well, perhaps you want lunch. Yeah, I want lunch. We're starving here. Well, got a menu here. Got a corned beef on rye, got salami, got bologna, got ham, got tuna melt, got tuna salad, got chicken salad. What kind of bread you want? You got rye, white, pumpernickel. I'll take pumpernickel. You want seeds or without seeds? All right, let's get to the condiments. It takes the guy like an hour and a half to order lunch, you know what I mean? In fact, we've had situations where the hostage taker said, you got anybody a little bit more intelligent than that guy? See, but what you're doing is you're establishing a rapport, you're using time, and that really safeguards lives. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to safeguard lives. People do these things for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's not what most people think. It's that, they want to, they're thinking rationally. It's usually, I was in a Toronto bank with a guy that wanted a white guy. He wanted a plane. I'll tell you why I said what it was. Because he wanted a plane to visit his friend Idi Amin in Africa. Idi Amin would have killed this guy. He was not happy to see him. But he got in his head like he was related to Idi Amin. A Canadian guy. He was like 3 generations Canadian. And it was irrational, and he was holding people hostage. People do this. But the same kind of techniques, you remember you use time, you try not to be humble, deferential, and that stuff works. Okay, any of the questions people have?
I'm in a situation where I'm negotiating on a deal that went sour, basically. I did a deal with partners. It was all in trust, nothing on paper, and they took advantage of me. We had a conversation where they agreed to pay me a certain amount of money for the project when it was completed. They now both have collective amnesia and deny that the conversation ever took place. And they can only pay me a certain amount, which is far below what they already agreed. We have a huge gap which we are trying to make smaller. So I'm just trying to figure out how I can get as close to the amount I want.
Are you doing anything else in your life besides this?
Well, yes, I've got a whole nother negotiation with.
No. Do you realize that the amount of energy you're expending here for the amount that you can increase this is minimal? In other words, see, sometimes you got to know when to let go. Okay? Apparently, these guys, both of them, don't remember what happened. Yet they deny it happened, although they're willing to pay you something, which shows me that they have a minimum, they have a conscience here. They know what happened. They know you're right, but when they talk to each other, they say, she's kind of stupid. She has nothing in writing. She has no legal leverage here. We don't have to pay her anything. In fact, in talking to each other, we're good guys to even give her this. We could stiff her completely. She go to court, she gets shut out, okay? So giving her this, which is really not fair in the moral sense, is more than she could get legally. Therefore, we're good guys. That's what their thinking is. What I would suggest you do is do the best you can, get the best you can, and cut yourself free from this, and write it off to experience, and never go into a situation like this where you can't trust the people again. I mean, that's a practical matter. These are jerks. These are, it's unfortunate, but in life we all make mistakes like that. And, has this ever happened to me? Yes. Is it happening? It's like, but see, the thing is, you don't want to spend the next couple of years, thinking, well, they offered me $12,000, and over the next 2 years I spent like a long time, but I got 1,000 more. Victory. It's like, a penny every week you're getting. You don't want to do that. Yes, next question.
I'd like some advice in negotiating a job plan in the technology industry. Where there are a lot of people looking and very few jobs open, and the companies are thinking, boy, we can get a lot of people at a good deal. And I'm looking for higher compensation.
Question deals with negotiating in a competitive market. How do you negotiate a compensation plan? By the way, this person is correct in using the word compensation. Compensation is better than salary because it's a broader term. Because sometimes they can't give you as much in salary because they're restrained, they're locked in, but they can give you other things, you say, that really translate into money. A company car, an expense account, trips, what have you. By the way, what I would do, remember I'm talking about differentiation? How do people in a tight market, how do people look for jobs? They answer ads in paper. There are 2 jobs, and how many applicants to that job? 4,000. So your odds against the job, getting the job at 2,001. If you played the state lottery, you do better. Here's what I do. I try to go against the grain. I would go to kind of companies you think would employ you. Walk in there in person and say to them, do you have anything? Here's my resume. And I'd like to see someone in human resources. I want to get interviewed. Now, people in human resources or personnel don't do that much during the day. They would glad you do an interview with you because it shows some sort of production on their part, but they'll throw it in the file. Then what I would do is I keep calling them up, I keep calling the line managers. I actually go there in the morning and I would sit in the lobby where people come through. So who is this person? Why are they sitting there? I'm actually spending more time there than people who are employed. I would come early before they open up, watch them all come through, then go do my business of the day, come back at night. And I'm waiting for an opening. During this period of time, in fact, right now, someone is typing out a letter of resignation, one of these companies. And the line manager says to human resource and personnel, we need someone right away. Rather than have them advertise in the paper, you got anybody here? They pull the file, they got you. In fact, they even know you. She don't even work for us. She's been here earlier and stayed later than the employees. You understand? You have differentiated yourself from the mass. See, big companies, I don't know, specific field, but it's like a data processing company, an IT company. IBM is always hiring people, even though I say, we're not hiring, we're cutting 20% of the workforce. Baloney. In this area, they're cutting 22%. In this area, they really need 2%. And that's true with every single company. So go there, differentiate yourself, make yourself unique, and be persistent.
Do you ever deal with negotiations in the man-woman love relationship?
A love relationship? Do I ever deal in that? It's quite frequently. No, kidding aside. You know, of course, all relationships are based upon negotiations. And if you're in a relationship with someone, well, no, everyone hopes to be, you know, in one form or another. They define their own relationship. But what you want to do is make sure that relationship is one which benefits you as well as benefits the other side. See, that's how you get people committed to the relationship. And what you want to try to do, you know, is really try to know as much as you can about the other side, spend a lot of time listening to them. But relationships, I think, should be ones where both sides grow over the years, grow over time, and you know, they come to have an affinity for each other and that particular relationship. I have married to the same woman for 42 years, by the way. That woman I tell you about? No. They run bus tours past my home. It is unique. However, to be honest with you, I travel a lot. So the actual time spent together is about 7 years. The 42 years, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were young, we were dumb. And in those days, this is speaking sincerely, which I really speak, we were dumb. We were more, in those days, people were more committed. They didn't have as many options. It was like there was a stigma if you left. And by the way, that's bad and good. It's bad to be in a lousy relationship with someone, but you try to make things work if things weren't. Today, people say, you know, it's not working out. Hey, I'm out of here. Try again. But I think you gotta find a mature person. By the way, a lot of jerks in certain parts of the country. I don't want to mention them. Like strange people. Men here are jerks. No, I mean, I talk to them. You know, I know them. Some of them are my friends. Jerkso. And the reason for it, I'll give you my theory. This area attracts a lot of beautiful women who, you know, interested in the motion picture business, interesting, you know, modeling, what have you. You know, it's like, in terms of the classic cultural beauty here, there are, you know, a lot of people here, because more people here are concerned with their bodies than other parts of the country. You know, if like concern for body here is like 53%. New York, it's only like 42%. Ames, Iowa is like 6%. They don't care. You don't care. I mean, you won't see a health club. People in Ames, yeah, I'm waking up today, I'm working out at the gym. You know, you don't care about that. I have a little flab here. They think that's natural in their body. And so as a result, you have these beautiful women. A lot of them don't make it into motion pictures. They don't all go back. They're here. They work in a beauty shop. They work here. They work at stores. And so there are these women, like probably ratio of pretty women by this standard of this culture is like 44% here. Guys are the same ugly ratio as they are all over the country. The average ugly ratio is 21%. Therefore, an ugly guy can get a very beautiful woman. And they think like, hey, you know, I mean, you see guys in restaurants. You think that's got to be the father of that child. Only she's 6'1" and he's 5'3". You know, you wonder what the hell's going on with the wife. Must be enormously tall. So, but I think you got to view it with, you know, a hell of a lot of humor and equilibrium, and things work out. But you got to be, you know, if you're interested in that, you got to be out there, going out socially, so that somewhere there's a right person for you. And what you don't want to do is lock yourself up and be a, you know, recluse, because then it's much harder. But ultimately, there's somebody out there. Somebody out there, and some normal person, and it's shocking. You know, sometimes it takes people longer, but it's worth the wait. Don't settle for junk. Go for the good stuff. Okay, last question.
What guidelines do you use for negotiating for yourself or having someone represent you?
There are two reasons why we negotiate poorly, okay? One, we're too emotionally involved. You know, that's why, hey, this is me. You know, that's why we do lousy with our kids. You know what I mean? Our kid, you know, and you're yelling at the kid for doing the same thing you did. That's what makes it worse. Make your own damn mistakes, you know? we're emotionally involved. Second reason we do poorly is that we have too much authority. See, in other words, I make snap decisions for me. The worst person to negotiate for, the president of a company, CEO is the CEO. Worst person to negotiate for the United States government is the president, whoever that president may be. Too much authority. So what you try to do really is limit your own authority if you have to negotiate. And you always say to the other side, well, of course, I'm speaking subject to the approval of my wife. Even though you're not married, you say that. I'd have to check this with my board of directors, my mother-in-law, CEO, what have you. That gives you a backup position. So you try to limit your own authority. If you do some of that stuff, you could really make things happen and be more successful. Thank you all very much. Have a safe trip home.